The story opens in a frigid winter scene, snow falling heavily on an old countryside house. The wind howls clearly and sharply. Though the house seems quiet, a voice begins questioning a rumor. Inside, two people discuss a tale of a madman causing chaos and destruction on battlefields. This piques one's curiosity about the madman. The first speaker describes him as a mercenary whose eyes lack attachment to life. He appears on battlefields and vanishes without a trace, only to be heard of in another fight. The other remarks, astonished, that a mercenary without a will to live is unusual. The conversation notes that the mercenary often mutters, "I survived again," as if fighting for a personal purpose beyond money or fame, especially tied to the empire. This raises concerns about the mysterious figure's identity. Rumors reveal he was once a prince of a fallen kingdom in another snowy wasteland. The mercenary in question trudges through snow, seeking a place to die, while soldiers watch from afar. Yet, the only solution he finds for his suffering is self-destruction. His identity is clear. This mercenary is Yuri Bryal, the third prince of the Bryal kingdom, who single-handedly ruined his name and nation. 10 years earlier, at the Double X Casino, the atmosphere buzzes with life. At 15, third Prince Yuri Bryal plays with enthusiasm and confidence, declaring luck is on his side. Royal Mage Hernando, amazed by Yuri's uncanny winning streak, jokes about his constant need for money. Yuri laughs, claiming his victories are dumb luck, urging his friends for another round. He boldly demands to double the stakes, exuding confidence in his winning streak. But Hanan reminds Yuri they must leave for an important meeting and can't be late. As they prepare to go, a group of men confronts them, accusing them of cheating and fraud. They seize Yuri, claiming he swindled their money through deceitful means. Furious, Yuri challenges them, asking if they know who he is and what they're accusing him of. The men mock his claims of nobility, vowing not to let him off easily, especially as a supposed prince. This enrages Yuri, particularly when they insult his tensions with the empire and accuse the royal family of arrogance. In a fit of rage, Yuri flips the table, causing panic in the crowd. The men freeze in shock, questioning the chaos. Stepping through shattered glass, Yuri, seething, calls them alley trash. With pride, he declares, "I am Yuri Bryal, third prince of Bryal." Coldly advancing, he threatens, "Today will be your new birthday under my hand," his terrifying smile promising to reshape their lives. One man screams in horror, confirming the crowd's panic. After the confrontation, the scene shifts to Yuri speaking with someone, justifying his actions. It's a nighttime meeting where Princess Catherine Ivarna Granzayan of the Empire arrives late to an urgent meeting called by her father, having sent a messenger about her delay. Catherine, sharp and composed, stresses that her interlocutor overlooked this incident just once. With slight sadness, she admits it's not easy for her, facing tough circumstances, hoping for understanding. After his father leaves, Yuri explains he must now tread carefully. He tells Catherine he shouldn't even be saying this. Sarcastically disappointed, Catherine asks if she's now a stranger to him. Yuri quickly clarifies he didn't mean it that way. But Catherine, angry and reproachful, questions why he gave her a blue pendant if he doesn't trust her enough to talk, throwing it to the ground. She storms off, demanding he not contact her unless she initiates. Yuri calls after her, begging her to wait, but she doesn't stop. Bitterly, he calls her name as she fades into the distance. Holding the pendant, Yuri wonders what to do next. Feeling escape won't be easy. Unaware someone watches from the shadows, smiling wickedly, signaling new danger. From that day, the fragile relationship between Bryal and the Empire reached a breaking point. Small provocations from the Empire escalated into uncontrollable conflict, leading to all-out war. Yuri is shocked to hear warnings of an impending imperial invasion. The Empire sweeps through Brock, flames spreading, cities crumbling under the assault. Amid the chaos, people flee in panic as Yuri urgently leads an evacuation from the palace. Fires rage, signaling the start of a massive war. The inferno engulfs the scene as citizens watch their city burn in sorrow and disbelief. Years pass, sacrifices pile up, and the war seems far from over. A soldier, Joshua, is gravely wounded. Soldiers try to pull Yuri from the battlefield, but he anxiously asks about reinforcements led by Fury Bryal, supposedly Bryal's greatest military force and the continent's strongest. Fury's absence at this critical moment shifts the war's tide toward the Empire. Initially, Yuri dismisses it as coincidence, unwilling to face the truth. But after countless near-death battles and reflecting on events, he reaches a bitter conclusion. Yuri realizes Catherine, the only person he fully trusted, betrayed him. His father's absence aligned too perfectly with the Empire's ambitions and sudden invasion. This fuels Yuri's suspicions. He wishes it were an illusion, but a reply to a hard-sent pigeon message confirms his fears, a brief note. "I'm sorry," plunging him into despair. News of Yuri's battlefield presence spreads, and enemies realize killing him would collapse Bryal. Yuri fights relentlessly, painfully aware the war is endless. The conflict with his foes rages on without resolution. Battles grow fiercer as Yuri defends himself and his kingdom with all his strength. In a brutal confrontation, Yuri takes heavy blows but endures. Exhausted, his body trembles, but he stands firm, fighting with all his might. He lands a powerful strike, felling an attacker. Struggling to stand, barely breathing, his sword nearly slips from his grip. Imperial forces surround him, offering no escape. Their faces show resolve to end him. Yuri stands helpless, tears welling in pain and despair, believing death is inevitable. Suddenly, another blow sends Yuri crashing down in agony. Blood splatters as he realizes he's trapped. In desperation, a guard leaps forward, sacrificing himself to shield Yuri. Stunned, Yuri watches the young soldier fall from a fatal wound. In deep sorrow, Yuri calls Roland, his loyal companion who stood in the enemy's path. Dying, Roland begs Yuri to survive at all costs, amplifying Yuri's anguish as he screams his name. Attacks intensify, soldiers fighting fiercely to keep enemies from Yuri. They insist he escape, stressing his fall would end Bryal's future. They shout for him to flee the increasingly dangerous area. Yuri begins his escape, hearing Imperial soldiers pursue, yelling to stop him. Later, the Imperial army searches a nearby area, insisting he couldn't have gone far, ordering a thorough sweep. Yuri hides in crates inside an abandoned house, cautiously watching the soldiers. Knowing he can't hide long, he resolves to break through to survive and regroup. While hiding, he wonders about his father, realizing if he hasn't returned, the Empire likely killed him. Before finishing the thought, Yuri senses someone approaching, a wave of danger washing over him. The door bursts open, revealing a formidable Imperial soldier. The situation worsens. Yuri, heartbroken and desperate, sees his death here would doom Bryal. He silently begs for rescue from this impossible situation, repeating that his death would end the resistance. Tears stream as he questions what will happen to the knights who died for him. Choking on sorrow, Yuri can only whisper a tearful apology, realizing he's powerless. A man appears beside Yuri, declaring words are useless now and the Empire will pay. He urges Yuri to flee as Imperial soldiers approach. Yuri runs through a forest, gasping, evading pursuers. The man's words echo, urging him to survive to rebuild Brock and avenge fallen comrades. But Yuri's youthful ideals feel like illusions, reality far harsher, ending in death for all. Yuri walks through heavy rain, recalling spilled blood and lost lives, wondering in sorrow what it was for. As rain pours, he realizes he's been fighting to punish himself. He desperately wishes someone would kill him to end his suffering. It's known Yuri seeks only a place to die. In the present, someone accuses Yuri, noting he throws himself into the deadliest battles, claiming it's for peace, but the only result is self-destruction. His selfishness persists to the end. The voice demands he die, calling him Third Prince of Bryal, Yuri Bryal. Shocked, Yuri realizes everyone who knew his past is dead. He thinks all this happened due to his mistakes. The pursuer insists everything is Yuri's fault. The warrior's face becomes clear, angrily declaring Yuri solely responsible for the tragedies. In a moment of realization, Yuri mutters, "Roland," suspecting the accusing voice belongs to his long-dead comrade. The voice condemns Yuri, stating Bryal fell due to the Empire's deceit, the noble Brand family's loyalty wasted, everything shattered. The warrior charges Yuri in fury, calling him a vengeful ghost who should have died. He attacks mercilessly, believing Yuri returned to face judgment for unforgivable sins. Yuri thinks death will bring peace, but guilt haunts him even now. Deep in sorrow, Yuri realizes the Brial bloodline will never abandon honor, even at the cost of death. Suddenly, he wakes from the nightmare, startled by someone shouting, "Yuri, Brial." The voice echoes, fully waking him as it urgently repeats his name. Yuri opened his eyes with difficulty, seeing a robust man with a noble bearing before him. The man asked with concern if Yuri was all right, noting he hadn't opened his eyes for 3 days. Shocked and deeply saddened, Yuri wondered if this man was truly his father, whom he believed dead. His heart trembled at the thought. Is this truly hell, and has father died too? But his father responded calmly, with a hint of sarcasm, asking if Yuri had really gone to hell. Yuri gave a bitter smile, muttering that for someone like his father, always preaching honor, he seemed to have lived a tumultuous life. At the end of their exchange, his father, feigning irritation, lightly smacked Yuri, scolding his nonsense. Yuri teased his father about his bad habits, urging him to repent while he could. As they spoke, a green leaf drifted through the window, and the air felt strangely still. Yuri sensed something odd about the silence, though he couldn't explain it. From the window, he saw maids crossing the palace courtyard. Everything seemed normal, making him question if he was overthinking. Yet, there were no sinners, no torturous flames, no demons to punish him. He wondered where he truly was. Suddenly, a worried voice snapped him back. "You're awake?" His father and 2 others nearby looked deeply concerned. Yuri's vision blurred, and he seemed to lose consciousness again amid their frantic calls. At that moment, Yuri was a 13-year-old boy, comatose or in deep sleep. Initially, he wondered if this was a dream or his life flashing before his eyes. Despite trying to wake or change things, he couldn't, and the world didn't end as he expected. Instead, long-forgotten events replayed exactly as before, leaving him no choice but to accept this reality. In that moment, Yuri realized he had returned to the past, to the spring of his 13th year. The next morning, maids opened the curtains, calling Yuri to rise for sword practice. Panicked, he leaped from bed, realizing what was happening, urgently demanding clothes before recalling he needed to wash his face first. Maid Aina gently reassured him to slow down, promising to help him wash, then told him to sit. In that moment, a painful memory hit Yuri, seeing Aina die tragically in his past life. This stirred deep sorrow and regret. Silently, Yuri reflected, overwhelmed by painful memories. He called Aina, who quickly responded, "Yes, Your Highness." Abruptly, Yuri asked her to slap his face 3 times, startling her with the odd request. Aina nervously asked if he was asking her to commit treason, but Yuri, cheerful and confident, assured her it wasn't treason if it was his direct order, insisting he was serious and always kept his word. The day in the palace began normally, the atmosphere pleasant and peaceful, the weather outside bright and serene. During training in the courtyard, Yuri felt sharp pain from Aina's strong slaps, surprised by her strength, which he hadn't remembered so vividly. He quietly observed passing soldiers, disappointed that none noticed or asked about the bruise on his cheek. As training began with his instructor, Bernard, Yuri noticed Bernard didn't comment on the obvious injury. Bernard seemed indifferent to what happened. During sparring, Yuri grew frustrated as Bernard didn't correct his stance or give guidance, silently continuing the duel. Yuri wondered when Bernard stopped teaching traditionally, shifting to silent sparring. He recalled visiting Bernard's office, where Bernard sadly said Yuri had innate swordsmanship talent, but regretted he didn't use it better. Bernard added that if Yuri were more diligent, he could be a great blessing to Brial. Those words sparked Yuri's rebellion, making him lazy and defiant, causing Bernard to stop mentoring him. From then, Bernard limited himself to sparring, recognizing Yuri's intractability. Yuri felt deep disappointment over Bernard's words, realizing they didn't motivate him but made him careless and lazy. Mid-training, Yuri called Bernard, determined to change things. He firmly told Bernard he wanted proper training from now on, no leniency or sugarcoating. As Yuri Brial, he declared he'd be serious henceforth. Bernard, slightly surprised by Yuri's sudden shift, accepted, unsure what caused it, but agreeing to train seriously. He readied himself, gripping a wooden sword, showing resolve for rigorous training. With firm words, Bernard told Yuri it was time for real training. The session began immediately, Bernard attacking with great force. Yuri pleaded for him to slow down, but it was futile. Bernard was resolute. Charging with full strength, he forced Yuri to defend seriously. Yuri braced himself, maintaining proper stance against Bernard's onslaught. Bernard attacked with power and precision, showcasing high skill, astonishing Yuri. Overwhelmed by the intensity, Yuri realized this was true training under Bernard. By the session's end, Yuri collapsed from exhaustion but felt satisfied, understanding real training with Bernard and believing his skills would improve quickly. Raising his hand to the sky, though tired, he hoped for rapid progress, confident his hard work would bear fruit. Bernard watched silently, amazed, wondering when the young prince matured so much. Suddenly, Aina rushed in, urgently calling Yuri, saying the king sought him. Surprised, Yuri wondered why the king summoned him abruptly, as did Bernard. Aina explained that Count Johann and his son had arrived, shocking Yuri. He recalled Count Johann's son, Brial, who betrayed the kingdom in Yuri's past life, leading to its fall. Vividly remembering Got's treacherous face, Yuri was filled with suppressed rage and contempt. In that moment, he called Aina with a commanding tone. She responded nervously, yes. Tense and angry, Yuri demanded to know Got's current whereabouts. At a formal banquet, the royal family gathered with Count Johann and his son, Got, where Yuri sat across from the guests with a stern demeanor. Attendees noticed a striking change in Yuri, whispering about the reason behind his sudden transformation, especially Count Johann, who openly praised Yuri's improved physique. The king jokingly suggested Yuri must have used something special to achieve such progress, prompting Johann to playfully request the same for his son. The king teased further, calling Johann's son clever, to which the count smiled, saying he still lacked a bit. Got, visibly admiring, turned to the second prince, but froze under Yuri's piercing glare, startled by the intensity in the third prince's eyes. The second prince leaned toward Yuri, curiously asking if something had happened between him and Got. Yuri replied gravely, with confidence, that Got had once stabbed him in the back. Surprised by Yuri's bluntness, the second prince laughed, teasing that Yuri was too forgiving to truly hold a grudge. Yuri remained silent, but inwardly his anger surged watching Got's arrogant, prideful demeanor reminiscent of his past life. Disgusted by Got's false confidence, Yuri recalled his betrayals. Got sensed Yuri's scrutinizing stare, growing visibly tense and angry, though unaware of its cause. Yuri resolved inwardly not to let Got's arrogance continue. Determined to teach him a lesson, he vowed that in this new life, neither Got nor any knight would act unworthily of Brial. He wondered if Got's past betrayal stemmed from jealousy and resentment starting now. Turning to Got, Yuri mockingly asked if he was truly as skilled with a sword as rumored. Hesitant, Got cautiously admitted to some swordsmanship knowledge, questioning the sudden inquiry. Yuri bluntly stated the kingdom didn't need narrow-minded knights. Got nervously clarified he wasn't yet a knight. Yuri firmly reminded him he was meant to become one serving Brial. Got carefully agreed. Without warning, Yuri challenged Got, charging with a shout, "Fight!" Got, startled, yelled in anger and confusion, accusing Yuri of cowardice for the sudden attack. Yuri pressed his relentless assault, showcasing skills Got hadn't anticipated, landing a painful blow. Got screamed, begging Yuri to stop, pleading for knightly honor and proper combat rules. Ignoring him, Yuri deliberately dropped his sword, bewildering Got. Without hesitation, Yuri lunged, striking Got with a powerful physical blow. Unarmed, Yuri delivered a kick that sent Got flying, crashing painfully to the ground. Got cried out in agony. Standing over Got, Yuri glared sternly, recalling how Got betrayed the kingdom and his father in his past life, selling his father's reputation to the empire for information. He told Got his father was a great count and respected knight, asking why he thought he held such a title and status. Confused, Got struggled to grasp the question's meaning. Yuri sarcastically asked if it was that hard to answer, thinking Got might not repeat his past life. But this time, Yuri would force him to face reality. He repeated, asking why God's father held such power. God admitted he didn't fully understand. Yuri decided then that no knight in Bryall, including himself, would misunderstand their role and responsibility. He reiterated, seriously asking why God's father held such authority, but God couldn't answer. Yuri's tone softened slightly, urging God to see the truth clearly. Extending a hand for a handshake, he told God to think carefully about his words. After the brief exchange, God left, while Yuri watched, pondering potential changes ahead. The second prince approached, curiously asking if Yuri was truly skilled in combat or just showing off. Yuri challenged him, asking if he really thought he'd lose. The second prince, smirking, admitted he did. Surprised, Yuri asked, slightly annoyed, if that's how his brother saw him. Laughing, the second prince called Yuri the kingdom's biggest troublemaker and gambler. Irritated, Yuri declared he'd no longer be that person and told his brother to stop causing trouble too. The second prince, genuinely shocked, stared at Yuri's calm smile, wondering if he'd gone mad or was truly changing for the better. After grueling training, Yuri collapsed, exhausted, proclaiming the session over. Bernard approached, formally ending the day's training, praising Yuri's impressive efforts. Calling his name, Bernard asked if Yuri was ready to learn the mana style. Curious, Yuri eagerly asked if Bernard would teach his personal style, but Bernard declined, saying it wasn't strong enough for a prince like Yuri. He suggested the Bryall style, a powerful and effective swordsmanship technique. Yuri recalled mastering it in his past life as a mercenary, reaching high proficiency, but felt he needed something more in this life. He began considering other options, driven to surpass his former self and avoid past mistakes. Noticing Yuri's deep thoughts, Bernard asked if he was considering a different style. Yuri requested Bernard introduce a royal guard with unique talent to teach him a new, distinct style. Pausing, Bernard recalled a perfect candidate, confidently naming Gerald, a guard with a rare, exceptional gift. Yuri, intrigued, repeated Gerald's name, unable to clearly recall him from his past life. Suddenly, Yuri remembered meeting Gerald in battle in his previous life, noting his skills were weak and average then. Yet, he was surprised Gerald survived numerous battles despite limited ability, wondering why. He vividly recalled Gerald kneeling on a battlefield, regretting not honing his remarkable talent amid raging war. Yuri realized both he and Gerald were powerless, with clumsy skills inadequate for the fight. Snapping from bitter memories, Yuri resolved not to repeat those mistakes in this life. Confident, he decided to visit Gerald that night to rouse him from laziness and set him on the right path. Meanwhile, Gerald stood in the training yard, bored and unmotivated, holding his sword listlessly, as if performing a chore he didn't care for. Observing from afar, Yuri smiled confidently, determined to ignite passion in this idle man and pull him from his apathy. The sky at dusk was clear, and the palace air was calm as Yuri strode confidently toward the training grounds. Sir Rosso glanced at the door, surprised by the movement, as if expecting a visitor at this late hour. Yuri entered with a smile, waving warmly at Rosso, who froze, wondering why the prince was there so late. Yuri calmly and confidently said he came to check on the training grounds. Rosso smiled, noting they were doing their best, though not as skilled as Yuri. Observing the soldiers training with unusual enthusiasm, Yuri admitted everyone seemed strangely motivated lately. Yuri abruptly asked about Gerald's whereabouts. Rosso, smiling, pointed to the far end of the grounds where the recruit trained. Seeing Gerald's lackluster effort, Yuri confirmed Bernard's assessment of his laziness and carelessness. He recognized the importance of true training. It should push one beyond their limits. But Gerald only did the bare minimum, lacking ambition. Disappointed, Yuri thought Gerald's skills had become clumsy and regressed from neglect. Yuri asked Rosso for a wooden sword, deciding to spar himself. Rosso inquired who he intended to duel. With a mocking smile, Yuri pointed at the idle Gerald, declaring he'd spar with the lazy recruit. They faced each other in the training yard, onlookers anticipating the unexpected match. Some soldiers cheered for the recruit, urging him to give his all. Yuri stood confidently before Gerald, loudly stating he'd heard of Gerald's great talent and demanded he show what kind of knight he truly was. With a mischievous, Challenging smile. Yuri told Gerald not to disappoint him. Gerald hesitated but accepted the prince's challenge, replying nervously that he'd try. Yuri charged with high speed, attacking with full force and warning Gerald not to falter. Shocked by Yuri's swift assault, Gerald's face showed astonishment at the prince's strength. They exchanged powerful blows at an impressive pace, each strike clashing with force and intensity. Spectators noted Gerald's precise movements, prompting louder cheers for Yuri. Gerald began to sense something odd and unsettling about the duel. As they traded heavy blows, Gerald noticed something strange about Yuri's rhythm. He realized the intervals between Yuri's strikes were too consistent, making him uneasy. Yuri, aware he controlled the fight's tempo, planned his next move, feeling quiet satisfaction in dictating the pace and forcing Gerald to follow. Sensing the duel was becoming a performance rather than a serious fight, Yuri decided to shift the rhythm. With a challenging smile, he declared it was time to fight seriously. Gerald struggled to block Yuri's next strike, overwhelmed by the prince's sudden speed and power. They exchanged rapid, forceful blows, Yuri's reactions and precision animal-like. Gerald, defending himself, felt Yuri had surpassed him. Initially planning to take it easy, Gerald now realized he had to try harder, anger rising within. He landed a strong blow, causing Yuri pain, who realized this wouldn't be as easy as expected. Yuri countered Gerald's relentless attacks, recalling Gerald's professional knighthood and experience in his past life. Even with his memories and skills, defeating Gerald wouldn't be simple. Yuri launched a desperate final strike, pouring all his strength into a successful hit. Gerald, surprised by the boldness, staggered back slightly, sparking Yuri's intense excitement at the unexpected result. Grinning with enthusiasm, Yuri raised his sword, exclaiming this was exactly what he'd hoped for. The watching soldiers, stunned that Yuri landed a hit on Gerald, praised him with awe and admiration. Yuri slyly asked if Gerald was holding back. Gerald, resolute, insisted he wasn't. Despite earlier dominating, Gerald felt unease. Yuri launched another powerful strike, narrowly missing, leaving him slightly disappointed. Smiling after Gerald dodged, Yuri remarked the blow came close. As Gerald stood in the arena's center, soldiers protested his odd behavior, questioning if he'd lost his mind. Suddenly, Gerald revealed a sword enveloped in energy, a mana blade, shocking and horrifying everyone present. Soldiers immediately tried to stop him, shouting in panic that he was fighting the third prince and needed to come to his senses. Gerald froze, realizing his actions, as Yuri's hair fell to the ground from the deadly strike. Yuri stood stunned momentarily, processing what happened, while the arena fell deathly silent. Gerald, in panic and deep regret, shouted, "Call His Highness," as if just grasping the gravity of his reckless act. Rosso angrily yelled, calling Gerald mad for his actions, as others rushed to check on Yuri. Yuri, though injured, smiled calmly and sarcastically asked Gerald if this was his first fight. Soldiers worriedly pointed out Yuri's injury, but he ignored the pain, urging Gerald to pick up his sword to continue, insisting there was no reason to stop. Yuri charged again with immense force, declaring to all there was no need to halt the duel. Their blows clashed fiercely, the intensity gripping onlookers with deep tension. At that moment, Gerald realized the third prince was entirely different. Yuri was willing to push himself to and beyond his limits. Gerald felt fear and awe, recognizing Yuri was surpassing his physical boundaries with astonishing determination. Yuri pressed forward, exceeding his natural abilities with incredible resolve, stunning everyone in the arena. They drew dangerously close, sparks flying from their clashing swords, as Yuri pushed himself to the brink of collapse. The scene ends with both fighters facing each other, each acutely aware of the other's relentless drive to win. Amid the stunned silence of the onlookers in the training yard, Gerald's blood surged with excitement and adrenaline, a feeling he'd never experienced before, despite facing stronger opponents in the past. They exchanged fierce, resolute blows, Yuri's eyes blazing with an intense determination Gerald had never seen. Gerald marveled at how this young prince could stir such deep emotions, awakening something within him. Yuri pressed his aggressive assault, brimming with energy and resolve to prove his worth. He launched another powerful strike, forcing Gerald to retreat quickly, realizing he could no longer hold back. Gerald shouted in frustration and anger, grasping how challenging the duel had become. Gripping his sword tightly, he prepared another attack. Gerald unleashed a ferocious blow, channeling mana energy again, aiming to end the fight with all his strength. The force shattered Yuri's sword, their blades clashing violently. Yuri's sword fell to the ground in pieces. Smiling calmly and satisfied, Yuri realized he'd achieved his goal, declaring clearly, "It's over." Gerald stood panting, visibly stunned by what had happened. Yuri extended his hand, calmly stating Gerald had taught him something new today. Gerald shook his hand, a mix of confusion and respect, admitting Yuri fought exceptionally well. Internally, Gerald felt deep admiration for Yuri's fighting spirit and resolve, wondering how someone so young could possess such unwavering determination. Realizing he was still holding Yuri's hand, Yuri jokingly asked what he was doing. Startled, Gerald quickly apologized and let go, visibly embarrassed. Some soldiers teased Gerald, saying he made the prince bleed and asking if he'd just stand there. Their taunts deepened his embarrassment, and he apologized again. Gerald hurriedly left, overwhelmed, while soldiers whispered that Yuri looked utterly exhausted. Yuri collapsed, breathing deeply, sighing in relief and peace. Opening his eyes, he was surprised to find himself on the ground, completely spent. Soldiers cheered and praised Yuri's impressive skills. Sir Rasso suddenly sensed someone beside him, turning curiously to see Commander San, leader of the Royal Guard, who had just arrived. Soldiers asked when he got there. Yuri, still on the ground, was exhausted from the intense duel. San stood silently, observing, deep in thought. Days later, the palace atmosphere was bright and serene. Outside, Gerald walked alone in the palace gardens, lost in thought. Suddenly, someone asked if his shift was over. Third Prince Yuri leaned confidently against a pillar, watching Gerald. Surprised, Gerald called out, startled to see him there. Yuri gave a cryptic smile, emitting a soft sound of his usual confidence, as if planning something. He told Gerald to follow, explaining they had somewhere to go today, but Gerald hesitated, saying he needed to train first. Yuri stopped, playfully asking if Gerald's mindset had improved since their last duel. Unable to escape, Gerald sighed and calmly replied, "I understand." Observing Gerald, Yuri noted his physique had strengthened slightly from their prior training, though not enough. It sufficed for now. Gerald followed, curiously asking where they were going. Yuri cheerfully told him to follow quietly without questions. Pausing, Yuri turned to Gerald with slight concern. Smiling brightly, he reassured Gerald that if he worried about danger, another person was already planned to join them. When Gerald, surprised, asked who, Yuri ignored him and shouted loudly. Yuri's call drew the attention of a third person in the distance, who turned upon hearing his name. Royal Mage Hernado turned toward the voice, surprised to hear his name. Approaching Yuri, he asked what the prince wanted. Yuri bluntly said he needed Hernado's help for a trip. Hernado apologized, saying he had another commitment and hesitated. Yuri, with a mischievous smile, said he was ready to settle his gambling debts, shocking Hernado. Turning serious, Hernado asked, "Are you serious?" seeking confirmation. Yuri, smiling confidently, affirmed he was serious, adding he could also repay Hernado's last loan. Sarcastically, Yuri asked if he'd ever lied to him. Hernado smirked, saying he'd never seen Yuri lie outside a casino. Yuri grinned overly casually, insisting Hernado had never seen him lie outside gambling. Feeling uneasy, Yuri wondered if his reputation was that bad, but hid it. Reaffirming his commitment to repay Hernado, Yuri urged him to join without hesitation. Hernado finally smiled dramatically, saying if true, Yuri must sign a contract first, pulling one out theatrically. Yuri gave him a cold stare, inwardly annoyed, wondering if his status as third prince had sunk so low that Hernado would bargain like this. Turning to Gerald, Yuri demanded he act as guarantor, shocking Gerald, who exclaimed, "What?" Yuri clarified he wanted Gerald to witness and ensure his words, forcing Gerald to agree despite his confusion. Hernado, thrilled, invited Yuri to start their journey without delay, genuinely excited for the adventure. As the trio prepared, Gerald persistently asked where they were going, especially curious since the prince chose a knight and a mage. Yuri paused, unusually serious and calm, then declared they were heading to Sword Mountain. Both Hernado and Gerald gasped in unison. Sword Mountain. Yuri gave a small, confident smile, silently affirming to himself that everything would be different from now on, with many changes ahead. Speaking with enthusiasm and challenge, Yuri announced their destination was to raid the ancestral prison, clearly hinting at a dangerous adventure to come. The trio descended a secret passage beneath the palace, prompting Gerald to express surprise, remarking he never knew such a path existed. Curious and anxious, he asked Yuri what awaited them at the end of this dark, hidden tunnel. Yuri calmly and confidently replied that it led to Sword Mountain. Gerald, stunned, asked if he meant the Sword Mountain, tied to their ancestors' legend. Yuri firmly confirmed with a single, resolute word, yes. Meanwhile, Yuri recalled his past life when the Empire seized Bryal, uncovering a hidden dungeon in Sword Mountain. Archaeological relics of Bryal's first ancestor were excavated, causing a sensation due to their priceless treasures and artifacts. The passage had once served as an escape route to this ancestral legacy, but the precious swords fell into imperial hands, never wielded by Bryal's people. Reflecting on his painful past, Yuri resolved that in this life, he wouldn't retreat or flee. Instead, he'd advance with full strength and determination. Silently vowing, Yuri decided to personally reclaim his ancestors' legacy in Sword Mountain for his kingdom, brimming with confidence and resolve. Finally, they reached a secret exit leading into a dense forest of breathtaking natural beauty. Yuri cautiously peered out first, followed carefully by Gerald and Hernado. Emerging from the tunnel, Hernado noted the path supposedly led directly to Sword Mountain. Confused, he asked how Yuri obtained the key to the secret door, a rare artifact. Yuri silently recalled finding the key hidden in a study corner, just as in his past life, where ignorance cost him dearly. Sharply, he told Hernado it wasn't his concern. While walking, Hernado suddenly yelped, cut by sharp leaves. Yuri advised him to be more careful, explaining the plants here had razor-like leaves, and told Hernado to stay close to avoid further injury. Yuri led cautiously, while Hernado watched him quietly from behind. Turning to Gerald, Hernado called softly, Sir Gerald. Gerald responded, why the hushed tone? Hernado asked if Yuri had eaten anything unusual lately, surprised by his recent behavior. Yuri sharply called them to hurry up. Hernado smiled, remarking that Yuri's temper hadn't changed. Yuri abruptly halted, ordering them to stop, sensing imminent danger. They spotted a pack of giant wolves moving in a large group. Yuri explained that wolves travel in packs, making their exact numbers unpredictable. Hernado, amazed at Yuri's knowledge, asked how he knew. Yuri calmly said he read it in a book, shocking Hernado, who incredulously asked, you read a book? Ignoring him, Yuri ordered them to move quietly and quickly, as the wolves hadn't noticed them. Hernado moved hesitantly, questioning the plan's wisdom, but accidentally snapped a twig. He gave an awkward, nervous laugh, but a giant wolf lunged at him from behind. Screaming, I'm sorry. In terror, Hernado was targeted. Gerald shouted, Sir Hernado, as the wolf charged with incredible speed and force. Gerald reacted swiftly, striking the wolf down with his sword, neutralizing the immediate threat. Yuri praised Gerald's quick response, commending his clever use of simple techniques against the wolf's tough hide, but warned the danger wasn't over. Glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, and Yuri declared their actions had drawn the alpha wolf, a terrifying leader. The massive wolf raised its head, letting out a chilling howl, summoning the pack. Soon, the trio was surrounded by angry wolves, ready to attack. Gerald drew his sword, infusing it with blue mana energy, shouting for Hernado to stay close for protection. The wolves advanced aggressively, growling, their eyes wild with intent. Two wolves lunged at Gerald, but he was ready, defending himself and his companions with superb skill and overwhelming strength. He repelled the attack, pushing the wolves back with his sword's magic energy. Impressed, Hernado remarked that Gerald's skills were exactly what one expected from a Bryal royal guard. Yuri agreed, affirming Gerald's competence but noting his current skills weren't enough for this dire situation. Gerald showed signs of fatigue, his body visibly strained. Yuri calmly called him to fall back, then turned to Hernado, addressing him by name. Hernado responded instantly, yes. Yuri reminded him of the king's trust in his abilities, saying now was the time to prove it. Hernado grinned confidently, unleashing his magical energy, declaring he'd use his full combat magic. Gerald, stunned, asked what Hernado meant by such odd words. Hernado unleashed a massive fire magic explosion, striking the wolves attacking Gerald. The fiery blast, combined with Gerald's sword strike, sent the wolves flying, allowing Gerald to leap back and avoid the explosion's aftermath. A second blast cleared the danger entirely. As the sun set, the trio reached their destination. Yuri expressed surprise at encountering creatures beyond wolves. Gerald agreed, noting the battles delayed them but relieved they'd reached their goal. Standing atop Sword Mountain, Yuri confirmed it was their target. Gerald, doubtful, questioned if this was the right place, seeing no clear signs of ruins or significance. Yuri insisted he was certain, though growing confused by the lack of markers. He searched anxiously, insisting something should be there. Suddenly, Yuri spotted a small, glinting object among the rocks, exclaiming he'd found what they sought. He rushed to it, excitedly calling Gerald to help extract it. Gerald asked Hernado to assist, but Hernado hesitated, saying hand injuries were a grave dishonor for a mage. Noticing something odd, Yuri knelt and found a partially buried, ornate sword with a glowing red gem. He easily pulled it out, holding it up, surprised by its brilliance and power. Hernado, astonished, remarked the sword looked brand new, not long buried. Examining it closely, Yuri saw the word sin engraved on it, puzzling over its meaning. Gerald stepped closer, asking if it could be the founder's legacy. Yuri, uncertain, said he didn't know. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, forcing them into defensive stances, sensing lurking danger. Yuri smiled confidently, saying, I believe we'll uncover the truth soon. The tremors intensified, the ground cracking dangerously beneath them. The trio screamed as they plummeted into a vast chasm opening below, caused by the collapse. Yuri quickly regained consciousness, finding himself on the ground. He noticed Gerald beneath him, enveloped in a faint mana aura, clearly used to shield himself during the fall. Smiling faintly, Yuri thought to himself that it wasn't bad at all, impressed by Gerald's quick reflexes and self-defense. Hernado approached, floating via magic, remarking in surprise that the place was deeper than expected. Yuri turned to him with a cold tone, lightly scolding him for prioritizing his own safety during the fall instead of helping others. Hernado laughed nervously, explaining the situation was too urgent. Suddenly, Hernado's expression turned grave as he stared into the darkness. He shouted, warning Yuri and pointing at something emerging. Yuri brushed it off, saying a subject change wouldn't work, but Hernado urgently clarified he wasn't joking, fearfully announcing a wraith's appearance. Yuri looked ahead in shock, seeing a mysterious figure in black armor, surrounded by a terrifying aura, emerge from the shadows. He quickly and fearfully recognized it as a Death Knight, a powerful entity tied to death. Yuri urgently roused Gerald, saying the situation was dire and he needed to get up immediately. Gerald responded with extreme lethargy. Impatient, Yuri kicked him hard, yelling for him to wake up, startling Gerald into shouting. Gerald snapped alert, fearfully asking where they were, still dazed. He soon noticed the Death Knight before him and screamed in terror at the horrifying sight. Grabbing his sword, Gerald demanded Yuri step back, insisting he'd handle the Death Knight, trying to muster courage and composure. Yuri stood calmly, carefully observing the Death Knight's movements with intense focus. He knew inwardly that a Death Knight, true to its name, was a warrior returned from death, far stronger than any ordinary knight. Still, Yuri calmly told Gerald not to worry, as he didn't believe the Death Knight posed a real threat. Confused, Gerald asked how he could know. Yuri replied with great confidence that he simply felt it. Boldly approaching the Death Knight, Yuri explained to Gerald that it was merely a guardian of the Founder's dungeon, with no reason to be hostile towards someone of the Founder's bloodline. He calmly asked the Death Knight if he was correct, but it remained silent. Suddenly, Hernado and Gerald shouted in alarm, calling Yuri's name loudly, warning of an imminent danger he hadn't noticed. They yelled, "Watch out! as a massive sword crashed into the ground before Yuri with tremendous force, shaking the earth violently. Hernado, horrified, momentarily imagined Yuri's head split by the impact, covering his mouth in terror. Yuri glared at him, firmly telling him to watch his words. Hernado quickly apologized, explaining he was only expressing concern. The Death Knight then told Yuri his confidence reminded him of someone he once knew. Yuri asked seriously who. The Death Knight simply replied, Eric Brial. Gerald and Hernado were stunned hearing Eric Brial's name. Gerald explained that every Brial native knew it. He was the swordsman who conquered the continent with a single blade. Yuri, reflective, considered that Eric Brial was indeed Brial's founder, Land of Knights, and its first king. He asked the Death Knight if he was the first to reach this place. The Death Knight replied with a firm yes, adding that only a Brial bloodline bearer could wield the sword, clearly referring to Yuri's lineage. Yuri was certain this priceless sword was the legendary blade of founder Eric Brial. The Death Knight confirmed with a resolute tone that it was indeed his former weapon. Noticing Yuri's odd look, the Death Knight asked why. Yuri, slightly embarrassed, said he felt guilty for touching another's property. The Death Knight solemnly addressed Yuri as Brial's heir, making Yuri look at him with evident anticipation and tension. The Death Knight sternly demanded Yuri state his purpose here. Raising his hand with great courage and confidence, Yuri declared he was Prince Yuri Brial, third prince and rightful heir of Eric Brial, requesting his inheritance. The Death Knight stared silently, processing Yuri's words. After a pause, he spoke, stating it was time to fulfill his long-awaited duty, formally declaring he would grant Yuri what he sought. With resolve, the Death Knight stepped forward, Yuri following into the chamber's depths, while Gerald watched cautiously. Gerald, bewildered, thought this was absurd, struggling to comprehend the bizarre events. He questioned how they ended up in the Founder's dungeon, conversing with a Death Knight, far beyond his expectations as a royal guard. Yuri suddenly called Gerald loudly, asking why he was taking so long. Snapped from his thoughts, Gerald looked at Yuri in complete surprise, still confused. He recalled a distant memory from his past life, standing exhausted on a battlefield as Yuri shouted for him to stand firm and fight. Sighing deeply, Gerald ran his hand through his hair, trying to grasp the strange events. Finally, he replied loudly and clearly, affirming he was coming, mustering courage to follow Yuri. The trio entered a vast chamber lit by massive glowing blue crystals at its center. The radiant crystals stood as the Death Knight waited resolutely for Yuri and his companions. The three stood ready, filled with tension and anticipation, sensing a strange energy enveloping the mysterious place. The scene ended with Yuri staring ahead with intense focus, the Death Knight's voice echoing in his mind. I hope they are worthy, leaving future events shrouded in mystery and suspense. Amid the mysterious, energy-charged atmosphere, Yuri suddenly found himself in an entirely different place. Confused, he looked around, asking in shock, "Where is this?" Noticing someone in the distance, he wondered if it was the Founder himself. But what he saw next made him reconsider. The figure wasn't human but a grotesque, terrifying creature charging at him with incredible speed. Yuri engaged in a fierce battle, struggling to block its attacks, grunting in pain. During the fight, he noticed a strange energy emanating from the creature, realizing it was mana. Stunned, Yuri exclaimed, "Mana style," as he saw the creature channel energy from its body into its sword. Yuri closely observed the creature as it channeled mana into its sword. He realized it was trying to teach him to control mana through actual combat. Sarcastically, Yuri asked if the creature truly expected him to mimic it mid-battle. He gave a bitter laugh, wondering if his ancestor was completely insane. Then, Yuri seriously reflected on the bizarre method his ancestor chose, throwing someone into real combat to learn mana without prior training. Yet, he understood such a mad approach was perfect for someone like him. Focusing intently, he tried channeling mana into his hand, asking himself, "Is this how it's done?" He shouted at the creature to draw its attention back to the fight, yelling, "Hi." Smiling, Yuri said that though he wasn't entirely sure how to do it, he'd try anyway. The creature grinned confidently and challengingly, ready to continue, saying, "Just do it." Yuri felt a surge of determination, vowing to become stronger no matter what. He recalled that soon, the Empire would reveal its true ambitions and invade Bryal again. Resolving firmly within, Yuri decided this time he'd crush them by any means necessary, never repeating past mistakes. He channeled all his energy toward the creature, preparing a powerful, decisive attack. Yuri shouted with great force and confidence, "I'll absorb everything," as he unleashed his strike. The scene abruptly shifted to Gerald, who had just woken, utterly confused. Looking around, he wondered if this was really the training arena. Touching his head, he said aloud, "This doesn't feel like a dream." Trying to process his surroundings. Standing in the arena, he shouted resolutely, sensing a presence, ordering, "Stop hiding and fight me." Suddenly, he noticed a swift movement and saw someone approaching with calm, confident steps, prompting him to prepare for battle again. Gerald smirked challengingly, saying, "Finally," realizing he faced a perfect copy of himself. Gerald cautiously advanced, wondering if this was the Death Knight's challenge mentioned earlier. He directly asked, "What's your name? Are you also Gerald?" staring steadfastly. His opponent smirked with confidence and defiance, replying in a condescending tone that Gerald shouldn't challenge his fate. The doppelganger mocked him, reminding him he joined the royal guard for an easy life. With a clear threat, it warned Gerald to stay away from the third prince, saying resisting fate would make his life more miserable. Gerald felt dejected momentarily, panting as he thought his old self might have agreed. But then, Yuri's image flashed in his mind. Smirking mockingly, he said, "Isn't that boring? It's just a performance," reigniting his spirit and strength. Confidently, Gerald told his opponent he clearly misunderstood things, perhaps because he was a mere fake. He firmly explained that once a sword is drawn, it can't be sheathed, and dwelling on past wounds only clouds the mind. Raising his sword, now blazing with blue mana, Gerald boldly declared, "What an arrogant way of thinking." Moving swiftly and skillfully, he launched rapid, precise attacks with his mana-charged sword, leaping high with a sudden, powerful move, landing with an impressive, fierce strike. As they exchanged quick, strong blows, Gerald noticed his opponent's style was too simplistic, lacking true courage or boldness. Analyzing further, he noted it overly focused on defense without taking real offensive risks. Reflecting on his past self, Gerald realized he once prioritized safe defense over bold moves. But he decided such an overly defensive approach was dull and ultimately worthless. Charging forward with a fierce, aggressive attack, he landed a powerful blow, staggering his opponent. Gerald exhaled, "Phew." Suddenly, something unexpected happened. A strange black aura gathered around his opponent, revealing its true form. A massive, terrifying shadow entity emerged, and Gerald, horrified, asked, "Is this his true identity?" Despite its dreadful appearance, Gerald reminded himself looks meant nothing, realizing Yuri was likely facing a tough battle too. Gathering all his strength and focus, he silently pleaded with great resolve and hope, "Please," as he prepared a devastating attack. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Yuri sat on the ground, utterly exhausted after taking a heavy blow. He appeared completely drained from the fierce battle. At that moment, the Death Knight approached, raising its sword, preparing a crushing strike toward the motionless Yuri. The Death Knight roared as it launched a ferocious attack, aiming a lethal blow at Yuri, who stood motionless, unable to move. At the last moment, Yuri gripped his sword tightly despite his wounds and immense pain, summoning his remaining strength and will. He unleashed a powerful counterattack, channeling all his mana and energy into a successful strike, sending the Death Knight flying backward with great force. After the intense clash, Yuri stood exhausted, gasping for breath, and exhaled, "Phew," feeling immense relief at surviving the deadly encounter. Yuri wondered how much time had passed during this confrontation. He acknowledged inwardly that things had become extremely dangerous, but through relentless training, he had endured and survived. He realized that through this fierce battle, he had learned to use mana effectively and skillfully. He also mastered wielding his sword with precision, regaining confidence and strength through this grueling experience. Suddenly, Yuri noticed his opponent beginning to fade, and in confusion, he muttered, "What's happening?" Confirming the strange creature's complete disappearance, he murmured, "It's vanishing." He quietly observed, understanding that this signified the end of the allotted time for this bizarre trial. Abruptly, Yuri returned to reality, opening his eyes wide, shocked, and asking, "I'm back." He saw Gerald and Hernado standing before him, both visibly worried. Gerald asked, "Your Highness, are you all right?" Yuri affirmed he was. The Death Knight quietly remarked that it seemed Yuri had an interesting dream, prompting Yuri to vaguely ask, "What just happened?" The Death Knight explained seriously that this was part of Eric's design, a trial left for a future Brial heir to uncover. Yuri recalled that in his past life, Sword Mountain was completely destroyed by the Empire, and no Brial family member ever reached it. He asked the Death Knight clearly if founder Eric used this mana style. The Death Knight simply replied, "No," adding that this was Eric's final legacy, blending his knowledge with an Eastern style in his later years, and confirmed Yuri was the first to inherit it. He explained the dungeon only opened at the right time, and its opening meant the moment had come to wield its hidden power. Yuri asked eagerly, "When is that time?" But the Death Knight calmly said it wasn't his concern, and Yuri would discover it himself. After deep thought, Yuri asked the style's name. The Death Knight answered. Eric called it Soul Severance. He then instructed Yuri to kneel, explaining he would pass down his ancestors' legacy. Yuri knelt silently and reverently, ready to receive this great inheritance. The Death Knight placed a hand on Yuri's head, saying in a deep voice, "Never fear your enemies." He firmly told Yuri, "You must act on what you believe." Yuri responded with clear respect, "I will." The Death Knight urged him to fulfill the Brial family's duty to the end, and Yuri again replied with deep reverence, "I will." Finally, the Death Knight spoke powerfully, holding Yuri's head. "Remember this." He assured Yuri that the Brial family never abandons its honor, even at the cost of death, declaring it the Brial oath. The next morning, Maid Aina cheerfully greeted the prince. Yuri smiled brightly as she announced morning's arrival. Exhausted from the previous night's events, Yuri sighed wearily while still in bed. Aina gently asked if he was tired from staying up late, suggesting he rest more, but Yuri slowly sat up, stretching tiredly, saying he visited the palace archives the previous night, hinting at a busy evening. Aina, surprised, asked why he went to the archives. Yuri calmly said he sought a specific record. The previous night, while reading intently in the archives, Yuri discovered crucial historical information. Founder Eric Brial had a brother who abandoned his honor and vanished from history without a name. Yuri concluded this mysterious man was the Death Knight, and likely the sword's original owner. Aina interrupted his thoughts, urging him to dress quickly as the king had urgently summoned him. Confused, Yuri asked why. She didn't know, but explained the king requested his presence right after meeting Hernado. Yuri felt slight disappointment and anxiety, realizing Hernado must have informed the king. Later, as Yuri walked with Gerald, the latter stopped him, saying he'd report today's events to the king. Yuri asked if that was necessary. Gerald, smiling calmly, said he believed it was. Yuri recalled this moment the next morning with mild frustration, thinking, so he told the king everything. Standing before his father in the throne room, Yuri respectfully asked if the king would train him. The king firmly confirmed Hernado had told him everything, adding that Yuri not only left the palace without permission, but also visited the founder's dungeon at Sword Mountain. Yuri, slightly tense, calmly replied it wasn't planned, it just happened. The king then asked with great interest if Yuri found the sword in the dungeon. Yuri clearly answered, "I did." The king approached closer, noting that many, Aina, Bernard, San, and Hernado, had said Yuri had changed greatly recently. Gently placing a hand on Yuri's head, he asked with genuine concern, "What caused such a remarkable change?" Yuri, tense, gripped his sword tightly without a direct answer, which didn't escape his father's notice. The king firmly asked, "Won't you answer me?" staring seriously. Yuri stepped back slightly, saying it wasn't that, prompting the king to ask why he recoiled awkwardly. Smiling, the king said he understood. Yuri was clutching the sword too tightly. The king reiterated his question resolutely. "I want to know the reason." Hesitantly, Yuri told his father he had a strange dream. The king, puzzled, repeated, "A dream?" Yuri continued seriously. Yes, and in that dream, I committed a great sin. The king, horrified, echoed, a great sin. Looking into Yuri's eyes, he asked calmly but firmly, what was the sin you committed in that dream? Yuri answered with a serious, steady voice. The sin was failing to protect the kingdom of Brial to the end. His words left the king deeply shocked and concerned. Yuri began speaking to his father in a calm, slightly tense tone, explaining that in his dream, Brial was engulfed in a great war where many perished. He tried to change the outcome, but failed. He continued, saying that after the kingdom's fall, he was forced to flee without honor or dignity, ultimately dying tragically. Sadly, Yuri explained that upon waking from the dream, the blue pendant his mother gave him had vanished. He vividly recalled its image, feeling deep sorrow and unease about its loss. He expressed to his father his belief that the dream might be a warning from his mother about the future. The king asked firmly, with clear concern, what caused the kingdom's fall in your dream? Yuri hesitated, thinking it was too soon to mention the empire, especially since he was working to change the future, meaning the empire might not invade this time. Finally, he answered uncertainly, saying he wasn't entirely sure, explaining it was an unfamiliar army. The king stared silently and seriously, seemingly lost in deep thought. After a moment, the king told Yuri he didn't know if what he saw was merely a nightmare or a true warning from his mother, Lily, but he was glad Yuri was doing better now. Yuri wondered doubtfully, am I really doing better? Feeling the weight of his past mistakes, he recalled the bloody, tragic history, silently vowing to do everything to atone for those sins and failures. The king interrupted, saying there was something else they needed to do, sparking Yuri's curiosity about what it could be. The king then firmly ordered him to bring his sword. A description followed about King Fury Brial, noting he had achieved great feats and possessed immense strength, making him a truly exceptional figure. It was said that from birth, he was believed to have the strength to surpass other children, pioneered many paths, and was widely renowned for his extraordinary combat skills. The narrative highlighted that at this time, Fury Brial was the strongest among the continent's top 10 warriors, in other words, the greatest swordsman on the continent. Yuri observed the location, loudly noting it was his first visit to his father's personal training room. The king remarked that he always believed none of his sons had any special talent in swordsmanship. Yuri responded calmly and confidently, saying he believed he was highly gifted. The king gave a slightly mocking smile, repeating gifted. Drawing his large sword, he prepared for battle, challenging Yuri, how do you define a swordsman's talent? Pointing his sword firmly. He questioned whether talent was strength, speed, reflexes, or perhaps intelligence. He continued calmly, if someone has all those traits, does that make them a great swordsman? Sternly, he answered, no, shattering Yuri's mental image. Yuri was stunned, his eyes wide with shock and confusion. The king, holding his sword, explained that beyond strength, speed, reflexes, and intelligence, there was a more crucial element, a force driving one beyond their limits. With a serious, resolute tone, he said it was stronger than fear or duty. Yuri noticed a profound shift in his father's aura, becoming so powerful and terrifying that it deeply unsettled him. The king, with a calm, slightly hesitant voice, said he didn't fully know how to define it, but called it an inner calling. Yuri looked confused and uncertain, his emotions clear on his face. Hesitantly, he asked if it was like fate, trying to grasp his father's words. The king paused, then replied it might or might not be, leaving it vague. Holding his sword, Yuri sank into thought, recalling that in his past life, he never had a destiny to follow a swordsman's path, but he deeply wondered, what about this life? Could my fate be different this time? The king asked clearly and firmly, what do you believe? Do you think you were born to wield a sword? And can you hear the inner calling binding one to the blade? Pressing further with intense voice, when you face death one day, do you believe you'll still hold your sword then? Yuri felt a wave of fear and tension, replying in a trembling voice, I don't feel anything. Unable to finish due to overwhelming anxiety. Overwhelmed by the king's fearsome aura, Yuri began retreating quickly in panic and confusion. He called out to his father, sensing something terribly wrong. Behind him, Menacing red eyes appeared, glaring maliciously from the darkness, heightening his terror. Yuri recoiled in clear fear, gasping, unable to control his emotions. Painful memories flooded back. He heard a past voice scream in his mind. "No! You must flee. Run, Your Highness." The flashbacks darkened as he recalled people crying for help, begging him to save them. In those memories, Yuri saw the kingdom engulfed in flames, cries echoing amid chaos and destruction. Horrific war scenes overwhelmed his mind. He remembered soldiers falling one by one, flames consuming everything in sight. Yuri snapped back to consciousness amid the chaos, panicking. What's happening? Why is Brial burning? Soldiers shouted from behind. It's the third prince, the last surviving royal here. This only amplified his fear and horror. He saw enemy soldiers advancing, their threatening footsteps echoing amid roaring flames. In fear and confusion, Yuri gasped, "The Empire!" In that moment, he was struck by a horrifying realization. He had returned once more to that cursed moment when Brial was besieged and attacked. Yuri was shocked by the horrifying scene before him amidst the flames, panicking as he asked, "What's happening?" An attacking soldier shouted angrily, "May death strike Brial's prince," as he charged at Yuri with full force. A fierce battle began, with Yuri and the soldier exchanging powerful, intense blows, sparks flying from their clashes. Finally, Yuri landed a heavy strike, causing the soldier to scream in pain and collapse, defeated. Brial's soldiers urgently shouted at the prince to flee, saying they'd hold off the enemy while he escaped. They yelled with great urgency as the battle raged behind him. The soldiers fought with all their strength in a desperate effort to protect their prince, one crying out in agony after a heavy blow. Yuri felt lost and confused, deeply wondering if it was all a dream. Dark, gloomy thoughts flooded his mind, haunted by the question, was Brial's fate truly to fall helplessly in the end, especially as he admitted to himself there was no way to stop it? Succumbing to sorrow and despair, Yuri stood alone amid destruction and massive flames engulfing Brial, walking with heavy steps. He recalled his oath, resolute that he'd sworn never to fear his enemies. He continued his inner monologue, urging himself to act on his beliefs and uphold Brial's duty to the end. Suddenly regaining strength, Yuri charged forward with immense power, his sword glowing with mana, landing a heavy blow on the enemy. The struck soldier cried out in pain. Yuri pressed his attack with increasing intensity, delivering critical blows to each soldier facing him. Despite his strength, a blow to his face made him scream in pain and stagger back. Yet, he quickly regained balance, continuing powerful strikes even as another soldier countered fiercely. Yuri defeated his opponent, collapsing him, panting from exhaustion. An enemy soldier taunted with great defiance, calling Yuri a dead man walking, openly threatening him. The soldiers demanded Yuri surrender, noting his clear exhaustion and injuries. Despite his dire situation, Yuri stood firm, declaring Brial's people never abandoned their honor, even facing death. He launched a desperate, immensely powerful attack, shouting as he inwardly repeated Brial's oath to uphold its duty to the end. The attack's force sent Yuri flying through the air amidst flames and destruction, clinging to his sword despite the extreme danger. Suddenly, he opened his eyes in a quiet place, muttering the phrase he'd repeated until the end. A gentle voice called, asking if he could hear it, and a hand rested lightly on his shoulder. Yuri snapped back to consciousness, shouting, "Yuri!" He hesitated, calling out to his father. Before him stood his father, muttering gravely, "The army," signaling imminent danger. Yuri clearly repeated, "The Black Army," emphasizing the situation's severity. His father tried to calm him, saying it was just a vision, urging him it wasn't real. Regaining consciousness, Yuri felt confused, realizing it was a vision. Clutching his sword, he muttered, questioning its reality. The king stood silently before Yuri, deep in thought, then calmly said he'd clearly been mistaken. He firmly told Yuri, "You are the one to wield that sword." Yuri quickly and confidently replied he'd decided, showing resolve. The king looked at Yuri silently, pensively, without further words, reflecting on his son's decision. Yuri anxiously wondered why his father's expression changed, thinking it looked like he was about to die. Trying to lighten the mood, Yuri joked with a smile, telling his father not to worry too much. He added cheerfully and confidently that he was a genius anyway, easing the tension. The king gave a faint smile, then abruptly raised his hand toward Yuri, surprising him. The next day, Bernard stood outside, watching the training courtyard, pondering something as footsteps approached. Turning, he asked, "Your Highness," seeing Yuri. Noticing Yuri's wound, Bernard jokingly asked, "Who caused the wound this time?" Yuri simply said it was his father. Bernard smiled, noting the king must have been stricter than usual, but wouldn't go easy in today's training. Yuri sighed, saying he knew. Inwardly, Yuri thought Bernard stayed in Brial because of his father. He directly asked Bernard if his stay was conditional on a duel with his father. Bernard honestly confirmed it was. Yuri then asked if Bernard would stay if he asked, even without a duel. Bernard, stunned, looked at Yuri with clear astonishment, not answering immediately. Bernard then replied with a clear smile, saying, "No." This inwardly annoyed Yuri, but Bernard calmly added it seemed Yuri really wanted him to stay. He said he might consider staying if Yuri showed him something convincing. Yuri asked what would convince him, and Bernard replied he wanted to see the dueling style of Yuri's predecessor, Eric Brial. Yuri, stunned by the request, responded incredulously, asking if Bernard truly wanted him to teach the Founder King's dueling style. Bernard calmly and confidently replied that the idea genuinely piqued his interest. Yuri immediately apologized, saying he couldn't, thinking inwardly that someone like Bernard, known as a sword demon, would naturally make such a request, but he couldn't fulfill it. Bernard explained it didn't matter if Yuri hadn't fully mastered the style, as he'd accounted for that. Yuri clarified it wasn't about mastery, but that it wouldn't benefit Bernard. He explained the dueling style was entirely tied to the mana Yuri used. Bernard, surprised, said he'd never heard of that, as mana was typically only used to enhance sword techniques. Yuri confirmed this was exactly why he couldn't teach it. It would be like showing Bernard half a technique, not the whole. Bernard stood silently, touching his chin, deeply pondering Yuri's words. Finally, he agreed, saying, "All right." Yuri lit up with joy, asking if he was serious about his decision. Bernard smiled, confirming he agreed, even if the style was only half complete, and he'd stay in Brial as long as Yuri was willing to teach it. He confidently declared he was certain he'd benefit from it, even partially, making Yuri think Bernard was incredibly self-assured. Yuri enthusiastically accepted Bernard's decision to stay, but jokingly insisted he remain in Brial forever. Bernard casually replied, "All right." He then requested Yuri demonstrate the style in practice, and they faced each other in a dueling stance. Yuri prepared mentally and clearly showcased his personal style, Soul Severance, charged with vibrant blue mana energy. He suddenly paused when Bernard mentioned he hadn't brought up something earlier, sparking Yuri's curiosity. Bernard bluntly explained he always planned to stay in Brial, adding with a laugh that the king wanted him to remain for at least another decade, smiling gently in a calm moment. Yuri, surprised, asked why Bernard wasn't attacking, as he stood still and steady. Bernard smiled, saying he'd start the attack, then raised his sword with immense power, infused with his own mana energy. Yuri, startled by Bernard's fierce attack, shouted in frustration and tension, asking why he said that at that moment. They exchanged intensely powerful blows, sparks erupting from their clash. Later, Yuri lay in bed, deep in thought. He reflected on the changes unfolding in his future, realizing it was already shifting. He recalled the terrifying vision of a different future where Brial wouldn't fall, far from the destruction he'd seen. Bernard's decision to stay was proof the future was changing, even without Yuri doing anything grand. Yuri admitted inwardly that he initially felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of altering the future, but now he was certain change was happening, slowly but surely. He resolved firmly that, though far from over, he'd ensure the empire was stopped at all costs. With great strength and determination, he repeated this resolve to himself. At that moment, Aina entered, pleading with Yuri not to cause trouble this time. Yuri sat up quickly, asking in surprise why she said that. Aina asked if he really didn't know what she meant, as he seemed to get into trouble almost daily. She explained it was because he had an important meeting the next day. Yuri, surprised and confused, asked, "What meeting?" Aina confirmed seriously it was a Senate meeting, and the king had told her Yuri must attend, wondering if he'd been informed. Yuri felt annoyed, and Aina added that the meeting was the next morning, with most Senate members attending. With clear worry, she noted there'd be some intimidating and stubborn individuals, begging Yuri not to fight anyone. Yuri laughed, gently taking her hand, reassuring her he no longer acted violently and she needn't worry. Aina asked nervously if he was sure. Yuri confidently replied he was. The next morning, Senate members gathered in a grand hall for the anticipated meeting. During it, someone suddenly shouted in anger, slamming the table and yelling, "No!" Yuri sat calmly, staring, thinking Aina was right to worry, especially since the angry man was none other than Duke Gerund. Duke Gerald Gerund opened the meeting with a public objection, declaring Yuri's mana technique wasn't officially recognized and deemed inappropriate. Yuri silently questioned this, noting the meeting was meant to focus on kingdom governance, not challenge the king's decisions. He felt frustrated, realizing it had become a platform to confront the king's authority. He understood why his father avoided such meetings. Gerund continued, saying it'd be better if Yuri learned Bryal's traditional sword style instead of this unapproved one. An attendee interrupted, objecting that the founder himself left this style, questioning how it could be unrecognized. Gerund sharply questioned the claim's reliability, asking how they could be sure it came from the founder. This angered others, who asked if he doubted the prince's word. Gerund calmly explained he was merely concerned for Yuri's safety and wanted to verify the truth. Yuri finally intervened with a calm smile, saying he was touched by Gerund's concern, to the point of dedicating an entire council meeting to his mana technique. Yuri recalled a dark memory of Gerund from his past life, a traitor who easily surrendered to the Empire when Bryal fell, filling him with anger and resentment. Gerund then turned to Royal Guard Captain Sand, asking his opinion. Sand hesitated, saying he couldn't judge definitively yet, explaining each mana had its pros and cons, varying by individual, which Gerund took as confirmation of his concerns. Gerund declared Sand's words confirmed the technique's uncertainty and risk, insisting it be abolished entirely. Yuri strongly objected, saying that wasn't Sand's meaning, only noting different aspects, but Gerund dismissed him, claiming it was the same and expressing concern for Yuri's safety. Yuri felt frustrated and angry, thinking the situation was worsening. Attendees began agreeing with Gerund, heightening Yuri's anxiety. Yuri reflected deeply, realizing that if he were just starting this mana style, he might have switched, but now Soul Severance was fused with his core strength, making change impossible. He worried he couldn't explain this to the council, wondering what to say. Suddenly, an attendee spoke out, saying Yuri's words seemed convincing. Everyone turned in surprise, wondering who spoke, as he raised his hand, asking to speak. Introducing himself as Free Baron Calcio, he boldly, half-sarcastically asked if any of them had ever fought at Orc. A tense silence enveloped the room, with attendees exchanging glances but offering no answers. Duke Gerund sharply eyed the new speaker, demanding his identity and official position. Baron Calcio calmly smiled, reintroducing himself as merely a free baron. Gerund, enraged, loudly questioned, "Why is a free baron at a Senate meeting meant for select individuals?" Calcio simply and calmly replied, "I didn't want to be here," adding with a sly smile, "What can I do about it?" He revealed that Count Cito had requested his attendance, shocking and surprising Yuri. Yuri wondered why the border lord, Bryal's frontier guardian, was involved. He recalled this lord was renowned, having spent his life on battlefields, known as a true soldier. He also remembered the lord never attended noble events, but sent a representative to this Senate meeting, surprising everyone. An attendee wondered why the lord suddenly sent this proxy, noting no explanation was owed, but finding it puzzling. Calcio, the lord's representative, spoke up, saying after witnessing high nobles play politics, he understood why he was sent. He added that mana style didn't matter on the battlefield, whether Bryal's or the Empire's lion style. What mattered was the wielder. Turning to Yuri, he asked, "What does the prince think?" Yuri replied clearly and confidently, seeing no reason why learning his founder ancestor's mana style should be controversial, affirming he'd learn it despite objections. Calcio stated that if the prince, a sword-bearer, chose to follow the founder's will, outsiders shouldn't make a fuss. Sarcastically, he noted it's always those who've never wielded a sword who speak this way. Gerund angrily objected, calling his words rude and inappropriate. Calcio calmly apologized for his rudeness, explaining that fighting orcs daily at the front lines tends to do that. He asked pointedly, "Nobles, how many of you have fought orcs?" He questioned if they thought orcs cared about mana styles. Even if his point was acknowledged, a noble countered that Yuri was too young to make sound decisions. Yuri intervened seriously, suggesting that if fear of bad decisions was so great, they could abandon the mana style and reassess everything. He asked if the noble realized how impractical that was. Calcio smirked, saying the prince seemed unwilling to back down, sarcastically asking if they planned to forcibly extract Yuri's mana core. The angry noble insisted that wasn't his intent. Calcio, with a sly smile, asked, "Then why the fuss?" Turning to Yuri, he asked if he agreed, but continued, sharply criticizing the nobles for pressuring the prince unnecessarily. He mocked that the capital seemed to have too much free time. The nobles retorted angrily, calling his words insolent. One slammed the table, noting the frontier had been quiet recently despite heavy funding. Calcio's expression shifted. With a sharp tone and blazing eyes, he asked if they truly believed the frontier was quiet. He explained hundreds of soldiers died daily, suggesting they didn't read reports. He added gravely that the day he left, 4 died, including a friend he'd breakfasted with, whom he buried. Heavily, he said orcs never rest, they live to fight and slaughter. Yuri reflected deeply on the orcs, realizing the issue might not be limited to Brial's borders. He recalled a border dispute with the Glen Duchy at this time, with the border map clear in his mind. He remembered orcs invading the Brial Glen borderlands, launching fierce, dangerous attacks, causing massive destruction. He asked anxiously if orc behavior had changed recently. Calcio confirmed they'd become more dangerous and savage. Yuri asked seriously, "What about Glen?" startling Calcio. Yuri inquired about Glen's army and whether it was stationed at the border, noting the situation's oddity. Calcio, visibly worried, said Glen's border forces had abruptly withdrawn without warning or explanation. With a pained expression, he added that border towns were completely destroyed, their people killed or enslaved, describing the situation as utterly horrific. Yuri realized the timing of events was suspiciously coincidental, suspecting a possible civil war or calculated plot. The discussion shifted as an attendee updated that a duke's third son was causing issues, frustrating Yuri. An awkward silence fell over the nobles, who seemed tense. Yuri decided the meeting had gone on long enough, declaring it over. Gerund hesitantly tried to object, but Yuri cut him off decisively, leaving and saying they should discuss urgent matters like Glen and the orc threat instead of arguing about his mana technique. Yuri continued resolutely, saying their focus should be on critical issues like Glen and orcs, urging them to stop fussing over a teenager like him. The scene shifted to a distant place, where someone communicated via a magical crystal with a mysterious figure, asking if the third prince had truly changed as rumored. The man behind the crystal replied, "Yes." The mysterious voice asked Calcio, sitting before the crystal, what he thought of Yuri. Calcio smiled confidently, saying the prince had a sharp, clear look in his eyes. The mysterious figure ordered further investigation into Yuri, saying he clearly deserved attention and guidance, and to monitor him closely. Calcio agreed, asking if he should dig deeper. The voice firmly replied, "Yes." If needed, he ended the conversation, confirming he'd do so and would contact again later. After the connection ended, the crystal darkened, and a profound silence filled the room. Calcio sighed by the window, looking at the streets, sarcastically noting the city's calm while soldiers died daily at the frontier. Observing the streets, someone caught his eye. He confirmed it was Yuri, wondering why the third prince was there, but then doubted what he saw, thinking it couldn't be real. Meanwhile, Yuri walked the night streets with a companion, saying they'd secretly left the palace as requested. His companion replied he often snuck out in the past, joking it happened up to 3 times a day, admitting he was a rebellious teen. Yuri sighed, calmly commenting that leaving the palace wasn't a big deal, his companion could leave any time. The companion explained that leaving alone was just a casual outing, but with the prince, it seemed rebellious. He asked if Yuri planned anything bad. Yuri seriously said he wouldn't, and even if he did, he wouldn't do it in front of him. The companion smiled curiously, asking where they were going. Yuri paused, then said with a sly smile they were headed to the capital's largest illegal casino. The companion, shocked, reminded Yuri he'd just said he wouldn't do anything bad. Yuri calmly reassured him he wouldn't, only needing him to guide him there, especially since his companion knew it well from drunken visits. Yuri abruptly stopped, declaring with great seriousness that everything he was doing was for Brial, affirming his deep resolve. Hearing Yuri's plan, his companion, stunned and incredulous, asked anxiously if he was serious, but then smiled excitedly, enthusiastically agreeing to join Yuri's thrilling casino mission. At that moment, Yuri recalled that in his past life, a few individuals in Brial caused immense chaos in the kingdom. One was a powerful moneylender and the dominant leader of the entire criminal underworld. The second was an influential woman who built the largest and most powerful trading guild on the continent. The last was a notorious assassin, known for controlling the underworld with sheer force and spreading terror across the land, particularly responsible for instilling fear in Brial streets. Yuri remembered that in his past life, the one who killed the legendary assassin was none other than Goryo, the powerful moneylender and underworld boss. Goryo appeared before Yuri and his companion at that moment, greeting them with a confident smile, saying it was a great honor to host such esteemed guests in his casino. Yuri stood confidently, asking Goryo with a calm smile if he already knew him. This confused his companion slightly. Goryo responded with a polite, confident smile, saying, "Of course, I know who they are, the royal mage and the third prince himself. It's the least I could do to welcome them personally." Yuri eyed him sharply and stated clearly he wasn't at the casino for mere entertainment or casual gambling. Goryo, visibly curious, smiled mysteriously and politely invited them to sit and talk more comfortably, gesturing toward prepared chairs. Yuri sat with his companion, who looked uneasy about the earlier statement, and asked in a low voice, "Why did you say you're not here to gamble?" Yuri firmly told him to be quiet. Goryo smiled with clear curiosity, asking if Yuri wasn't there to gamble. Was he there to borrow money? Yuri confirmed confidently that he indeed wanted a loan from Goryo, explaining he planned to invest it. Goryo slyly remarked that perhaps Yuri wanted to start a private fund and asked if he had grand ambitions. Yuri sharply cut him off, saying interrogation wasn't Goryo's role. Goryo quickly apologized politely, saying he meant no rudeness. Yuri responded confidently that it was fine. He was there to request financial support and asked Goryo to get to the point. Yuri clearly outlined his plan, telling Goryo that with the loan, he'd buy a large quantity of a rare spice, Magranja, from Glen, noting its demand would soon skyrocket. His companion, shocked, asked in disbelief what exactly he was talking about. Goryo expressed doubt about the investment's profitability, acknowledging Magranja's role in luxury perfume production but questioning its real value. Yuri firmly reiterated that demand would soon outstrip supply. His companion reflected deeply on why the spice's price might rise, recalling recent issues in Glen and Orc invasions, but remained hesitant and unconvinced. He wondered if Yuri was truly trying to buy out the spice before anyone else. Seeing Yuri's calm, confident expression, he felt Yuri knew more than he revealed. Finally, Goryo smiled broadly and accepted the proposal when Yuri asked him to name the loan amount directly, not as Brial's prince, but as a fellow investor. Goryo, with a confident smile, asked Yuri to sign the loan agreement. Yuri, equally confident, took the pen and signed without hesitation. After leaving, Yuri's companion looked at him with clear worry, exclaiming in surprise that he didn't expect Yuri to actually borrow from Goryo or sign so easily. His companion protested, saying it wasn't fair and asking why Yuri didn't share his true plan initially. Yuri smirked mischievously, saying he didn't because his companion would have dragged him straight to his father, the king. The companion asked if they were heading to the trading guild now. Yuri confirmed he had a request to make there. Yuri mentally reviewed Magranja's details, explaining to himself that the spice guaranteed profit. The only chemist capable of developing a substitute was a close aide to a powerful duke, but was assassinated as the first victim in a civil war. Yuri noted that because of this, Magranja would remain the only option for a long time, causing its market value to soar, yielding huge profits for those holding large quantities. He paused, looking at an abandoned building, thinking he couldn't entrust such a critical, sensitive task to just anyone. Suddenly, Yuri shouted excitedly that he'd found it, startling his companion, who exclaimed in shock and confusion. His companion, disbelieving, looked at the dilapidated building and protested, questioning Yuri's choice of such a rundown place. Yuri ignored him, loudly calling for Elaine. This alarmed his companion, who urged Yuri to wait and not act so boldly in such an unsuitable place for a trading guild. A woman opened the door, calmly asking who he was, then answering herself, confirming she was Elaine. Yuri clearly introduced himself as Prince Yuri Bryal, the third prince, and directly requested she undertake a specific task. Elaine placed a hand on her chest, visibly surprised, with worry and confusion on her face. Yuri's companion shouted in shock, clearly distressed by the prince's decision, asking with great irritation if he'd lost his mind. Yuri responded with boredom and sarcasm, pointing out his companion had become too comfortable speaking to him like he wasn't a prince. His companion, deeply frustrated, said anyone would say the same, questioning how Yuri could buy spices through a failed, crumbling business. Inwardly, Yuri thought with complete confidence that Elaine seemed like a struggling merchant facing financial ruin now, but he knew this wouldn't last. Soon, she'd become one of the continent's most renowned and wealthiest merchants, running a massive trading guild previously unheard of. Unlike Goryo, who hid his true face behind fake smiles and used shady tactics when cornered, Elaine held her promises and commitments to clients as sacred. Yuri smiled inwardly with confidence, thinking that in his past life, Elaine was a legendary merchant, but this time, he'd make her a greater legend than the world had ever known. His companion, exhausted, asked if Yuri was done with his crazy plans, hoping this was the last. Yuri raised a finger with a sly smile, saying there was one more thing to do, prompting his companion to shout in disbelief, asking what it was. His companion tried to stop Yuri as he moved again, shouting for him to wait, rushing after him, panting. He asked what Yuri was planning now and where they were going. Inwardly, Yuri thought confidently, reviewing his plan clearly. First, borrow money from Goryo. Second, use Elaine's trading guild. Now, the final step was finding the last key person to complete his plan. Yuri and his companion passed through a poor, rundown area where darkness and silence dominated. A miserable-looking young man sat in a dark alley corner. They saw men engaged in a suspicious, violent brawl as Yuri continued searching for his target. Yuri stopped, looking around with calm confidence, certain the person he sought was nearby. Suddenly, a clear image of that person appeared before him, and he thought with absolute certainty he'd found her. Approaching a group of youths gathered around something, Yuri greeted them with a confident smile, saying, "Hello." He calmly introduced himself as Yuri, the third prince of Bryal. One youth asked in surprise if he was really a prince. Yuri affirmed confidently that he was. At that moment, Yuri recalled the identity of the person before him. It was her, Asana, the notorious assassin who brutally killed Goryo in his past life. She was also a surviving member of the Red Moon cult. Yuri clearly recalled her full name in his mind, Asana. Asana cautiously and incredulously asked if Yuri was truly a prince, bewildered by the idea of royalty in such a place. Yuri reassured her, saying she didn't need to be wary of him, explaining he was there to help. Asana remained silent, eyeing Yuri with tension and unease, saying nothing. Yuri turned to his companion, firmly demanding he hand over what he was carrying. The companion, visibly frightened, gave him a bag, saying in a trembling voice, "Here, Your Highness." Yuri noticed a small girl clinging to Asana's arm, wondering deeply if she was the reason behind Asana's actions. He recalled that in his past life, Asana borrowed heavily from Goryo to treat the girl, but like others indebted to him, her life was ruined by that debt. This led Asana's life to spiral, ultimately turning her into a skilled professional assassin. Determined to prevent that tragedy, Yuri handed Asana the bag, telling her to use the money to treat the girl at the temple. Asana warily asked, "And what do you want in return?" Yuri simply replied he wanted one thing. smiling confidently. He repeated he was Yuri Bryal, the third prince, asking her to remember his name. As they left, Yuri reiterated to Asana to remember his name. His companion, worried and confused, asked why he gave so much money to a beggar. Yuri calmly said it was an investment in the future. Leaving the area, Yuri reflected that he'd successfully built ties with key future allies, Goryo, Eline, and Asana. Walking with his companion, Yuri recalled one more person he needed to speak with. He asked his companion what he saw in the Founder King's tomb. With a wry smile, his companion said he saw himself as a gambler. Shocked, Yuri asked, "What?" His companion explained he saw himself betting his life at the Legas casino in the Empire. Yuri, slightly confused, heard his companion smile and say it suited him. Yuri turned away, exasperated, saying it didn't matter what happened today. His companion asked, "Doesn't it?" Yuri seriously and calmly requested he keep everything that happened secret. The next morning, Royal Mage Hernando and Yuri's companion stood before the king, who addressed Hernando by name, saying he heard he went out with Yuri the previous day. Hernando confirmed, saying he did. The king directly and seriously asked what happened that night. Hernando explained before the king that Yuri convinced him to leave the palace. He added they went to the capital's largest casino. The king, surprised, asked if Yuri actually gambled there. Hernando calmly confirmed Yuri did. The king, slightly disappointed, remarked he thought Yuri was skilled at cards, but learned he lost all the money Hernando lent him. He asked what happened next. Hernando explained Yuri borrowed from Goryo, visited a rundown trading guild, and gave money there. He added Yuri gave a large sum to an orphan, then they walked around to see how the common folk lived. Hernando smiled, noting Yuri seemed very interested in ordinary people's lives. The king asked with great interest if Yuri returned to the palace afterward. Hernando clearly replied, yes, and that was all. The king acknowledged briefly, saying he understood. He fell silent, reflecting deeply. Suddenly, he asked Hernando if he planned to attend the upcoming royal ball. Hernando, smiling brightly, confirmed he would. The king, slightly surprised, said he thought Hernando wasn't interested in royal events. Hernando replied that people's minds change over time, adding with a smile that it had been a while since he danced, seeming excited for the social event. Meanwhile, Yuri trained intensely with his instructor, Bernard, in the courtyard, panting from exhaustion. Suddenly, Yuri stopped, looking around with clear confusion, noticing something. He jokingly told Bernard he seemed popular, noting maids were staring and teasing that Bernard should attend the ball, as many would expect him. Bernard coldly replied he wasn't interested. Yuri shifted topics, discussing their sword technique, saying Bernard was right that it had no fixed stance or form, as he'd said before. Just go with the flow and adapt to the situation. Bernard sighed, saying Yuri still didn't fully grasp the concept of a singular yet fluid sword style, and to truly understand, he'd need to see it in real combat, which wasn't easy. He added that Yuri was progressing at an astonishing rate, praising his skill in using mana, admitting he was genuinely surprised by Yuri's speed and ability. Yuri felt slightly guilty, as he was trying to erase his old sword style from memory and replace it with the new one, but felt things were progressing naturally. Bernard earnestly advised Yuri not to rush or push too hard, expressing genuine concern. Yuri, surprised, asked if he was truly worried. Bernard confirmed he was, as Yuri's rapid progress was alarming. He explained seriously that despite Yuri's achievements for his age, his body wasn't fully developed, and he needed to be extremely cautious. Yuri confidently reassured Bernard he'd maintain balance and requested to continue training. Bernard asked if he was sure. Yuri confidently confirmed he was. During training, Yuri asked if they could spar with real swords instead of wooden ones, feeling a strong urge to grow stronger quickly. Bernard agreed, and both took serious fighting stances. Yuri jokingly proposed a bet. If he landed a hit on Bernard, Bernard would attend the ball. Bernard firmly refused. Yuri, visibly disappointed, asked why. Bernard calmly said he'd win anyway, and Yuri would just cancel the bet if he lost. This irritated Yuri. Yuri began his attack, mana gathering around his sword as he confidently declared they'd soon see the result. He charged at Bernard with great force, shouting he'd definitely land a hit. Ultimately, Yuri couldn't hit Bernard as hoped, and the matter remained unresolved. Days later, at the royal ball, luxurious carriages and elegant horses moved swiftly toward the ballroom. Inside one was the empire's second prince, George Giovanna Grenzelin, smiling as he told his companion she hadn't taken her eyes off the window the entire ride. The companion, Princess Yekaterina Ivana Grenzelin, replied excitedly with a bright smile that she was simply thrilled, as it had been a while since she attended such a ball. With a gentle, radiant smile, she added that there was someone special. That evening, in a magnificent and opulent palace, someone asked Prince Yuri his opinion on the venue's appearance. Yuri replied hesitantly that it felt overly decorated and extravagant. Aina responded with a gentle smile, saying she thought it looked wonderful and reminded him he used to love such decor in the past. She then informed him she'd prepared everything for the ball, prompting Yuri to look at her quietly. Suddenly, Yuri asked Aina to dance with him, surprising and flustering her. Yuri explained he wanted to practice dancing and had no one else to practice with, making her feel nervous and uncertain. Aina anxiously asked if it was really necessary, confusing Yuri with her odd reaction. With clear worry, Aina asked if he planned to make her trip or fall, but he quickly and firmly reassured her he had no such intention. Yuri calmly said he wasn't teasing, trying to put her at ease. Stepping closer, he confidently told her, "Just follow my lead slowly." Aina, still nervous, nodded. As they danced, she asked if he was mocking her because he danced so well. Yuri confidently replied he was indeed a skilled dancer, prompting her to ask how often he danced and with whom. Yuri joked he was quite popular but had never danced with someone as short as her before, promising the height difference wouldn't be an issue for long. While dancing, Yuri calmly smiled and told Aina she'd stepped on his foot. Aina cheerfully apologized, admitting she'd made another mistake. At the grand ball, the ballroom was filled with nobles dancing to beautiful music. The king sat majestically on his throne, quietly sipping a drink while observing the celebration. Yuri stood among the guests, watching the attendees and waiting to see what would happen next. He noticed with great concern that Count Sito had arrived in person, a rare occurrence, and wondered why the Count came himself this time, especially since he'd previously sent Baron Calcio. Yuri spotted his older brother and calmly asked if his eyesight was worsening, as he'd been wearing glasses more often. His brother reassured him it wasn't serious enough to worry about. Suddenly, trumpets blared, signaling the arrival of an important guest. The empire's second prince, George Ivana Grenzelin, appeared, confidently and calmly approaching the king. The prince greeted the king with formal respect, and they exchanged courteous words. George mentioned he'd come with his sister. At that moment, his sister, Princess Yekaterina Ivana Grenzelin, drew everyone's attention as she gracefully and confidently approached the king. Yuri stood frozen in shock upon seeing Yekaterina, his face filled with astonishment and disbelief. Yekaterina bowed deeply before the king, offering her formal greetings. Yuri vividly recalled past life memories with her, where their bond was strong, but with firm resolve, he decided he wouldn't repeat the same mistakes and would avoid her. Yet, Yuri slowly approached Yekaterina, extending his hand in a polite, formal gesture. She smiled gently and calmly, waiting to see what he'd say or do. Standing in the ballroom, Yuri noticed guests whispering among themselves. Feeling slightly nervous and uneasy, he leaned slightly to one side, sighing softly to stay calm. From a distance, Cedric danced with a guest, treating everyone with kindness and respect as usual. An attendee remarked this was exactly what you'd expect from a gentleman like Cedric. In contrast, Yuri felt inferior comparing himself to Cedric. A young man approached Yekaterina, greeting her with a smile and inviting her to dance. She agreed with a gentle smile. Yuri quietly watched, filled with suppressed sadness and anger. Frustrated, he couldn't control his emotions despite resolving to avoid her. Aina approached with a kind smile, asking if he wanted cake. Yuri calmly thanked her, saying he was fine, then asked if she was tired from working nonstop. Aina replied with a bright smile that it was nothing compared to caring for someone she knew well, clearly referring to Yuri. He joked, asking her to bring him lots of cake before she left. Aina kindly told him to let her know if he needed anything else, and advised him to take care of himself. Yuri stood alone, sighing softly, trying to clear his troubled thoughts, but suddenly noticed someone approaching and looked up curiously. It was the Empire's second prince, George Ivana Grinzelin. A clear image of George formed in Yuri's mind. He recalled that in his past life, George was a formidable military commander who led the Empire's army to invade Bryal. Yuri quickly stepped forward, formally introducing himself. I am Prince Yuri Bryal, the third prince. Inwardly, he tried to stay calm, reminding himself not to show open hostility. George gave a cold, confident smile, saying, Yes, you're the one. Yuri felt inner tension but maintained a calm, steady gaze. George calmly asked Yuri's age, commenting he'd heard Yuri turned 13 this year. Stepping back with a mysterious smile, he said, as expected of Bryal's king's son, Yuri indeed had talent. Yuri burned with inner anger at the prince's veiled threat, acknowledging that despite his youth, George was unbelievably strong. Yuri clenched his fists in silent rage, thinking the Empire's princes were nothing but villains. Suddenly, Aina fell after accidentally bumping into George, crying out in panic and apologizing profusely. Trembling in fear, her voice shook as she apologized for spilling wine on the royal emblem embroidered on his attire. George turned to her with a mocking smile, saying coldly it was a problem, adding sharply that she'd made a grave mistake. Standing over Aina, who knelt in terror, George coldly declared that under Empire law, the fitting punishment for such a mistake was death. Yuri's eyes blazed with anger, realizing George was deliberately provoking them and humiliating Bryal in front of everyone. A stunned silence filled the room as Aina knelt trembling in fear, while Yuri stood ready to act, his rage visibly rising. Aina was overwhelmed with terror after Prince George declared her execution under imperial law, his smile cold and menacing. George clarified that a beheading would suffice, but the king intervened firmly, telling George this was his ball, and if he wanted blood, he should spill it on his own land, not here. George smiled again, offering a formal apology to the king. He explained that until now, the Empire and Bryal's relationship was based on mutual respect, but it seemed to him that Bryal no longer wished to respect the Empire. George asked if the king recalled the Gat Isa incident, clearly a sensitive matter. He noted that in that event, the king personally executed an imperial knight, yet the emperor chose to respect the decision without retaliation. George said the current situation was similar, and he was acting to protect both nations' honor and peace. Inwardly, Yuri recalled that painful incident when his father killed an imperial knight. The king, visibly weary, placed a hand on his head, saying he didn't want this but only wished to end it, recognizing the kingdom's grave danger. As George prepared to execute Aina with his sword, assuring it wouldn't be too bloody, Yuri realized intervening would directly challenge the Empire. His mind was torn between reality and ideals, strength and reason. Yet, with iron resolve, he affirmed that Bryal never abandons its honor, no matter the cost, recalling his family's ancient oath to protect Bryal's honor at all costs. Yuri loudly called out to stop George, declaring Aina was his personal maid. Confidently and firmly, he stated her mistakes were his responsibility, making the king realize he'd overlooked that detail. Yuri announced to all present that he, too, was a prince, urging them to consider this and reconsider her execution. Inwardly, he admitted that in his past life, he was a criminal, and this life was his punishment for past deeds. With a resolute gaze, Yuri demanded George replace the execution with a duel. George chuckled at Yuri's unusual request, then asked to confirm his name. Yuri affirmed it was indeed Yuri. George politely asked permission to address him by name, and Yuri agreed. George turned to the king, saying the third prince made a reasonable proposal, which he intended to accept, asking if that was acceptable to the king. After a moment's silence, the king agreed with a single word, yes, accompanied by a soft sigh, reflecting the situation's weight. George, amused, told Yuri with a confident smile he wouldn't fight personally, out of respect for his status, and would instead choose the youngest Imperial Guard knight to face him, given Yuri's youth. Yuri thanked George politely, and George said he'd see him later, leaving Yuri to prepare. Yuri calmly called to Aina, still trembling on the ground. He offered his hand to help her up, gently telling her to stand, surprising her with his gesture. She spoke with clear worry, but Yuri placed a hand on her back, asking her to rest. Aina, looking at him with deep sadness, wondered how she could rest when he was in this situation because of her. Yuri reassured her with a gentle smile, telling her not to worry. After Aina left, Yuri walked away calmly and confidently. Suddenly, he noticed Princess Yekaterina sitting alone in the distance, catching him off guard. He silently gazed at her, repeating her name in his mind without speaking, but quickly dismissed those thoughts as unnecessary and futile. He continued toward the ballroom's exit. Count Sito stood alone, quietly sipping wine while observing the guests. Yuri was seen calmly walking through an empty palace corridor, deep in thought. His brother Cedric suddenly appeared, but Yuri kept walking, avoiding his gaze. Cedric calmly asked what Yuri was thinking, making him stop and turn with visible tension. Yuri was surprised and worried by Cedric's presence. He explained he couldn't let George kill Aina. Cedric gave a warm, gentle smile, saying softly, "You really are," without finishing. Stepping closer, he gently ruffled Yuri's hair, smiling. "You're kind," clearly showing understanding and appreciation. Yuri felt happy and comforted by Cedric's gesture, a gentle, peaceful expression on his face. He thought with a soft smile it had been a long time since he felt this way. Cedric calmly asked if Yuri needed help with what was coming. Yuri recalled George's words about the duel, knowing it was inevitable, and he had to fight for Brial's honor. Yuri replied calmly and confidently, saying he knew what worried Cedric, and he'd handle it alone without help. He explained with clear confidence that he started this and must end it. Cedric smiled, saying with complete calm that he fully trusted Yuri, then told him to rest and not worry about the event's remainder, as he'd handle it. Yuri quietly thanked Cedric and left, while Cedric thought that if the kingdom hadn't fallen in the past, Yuri would surely have been a great king. As Yuri departed, he resolved to do everything to one day see the kingdom Cedric would build in this new life. With complete confidence, Yuri vowed to fight to make that dream reality, no matter who he faced. The next morning, Yuri stood ready to face George's chosen opponent in the dueling hall. The crowd sat silently, anticipating the upcoming battle. A council noble remarked in surprise at the third prince engaging in a real duel, asking the royal guard captain, saying, "What do you think?" The imperial knight began preparing. An attendee noted his mana was extremely stable, and he was skilled with a sword, despite not being a formal knight. His expression showed great skill, and a nearby person praised him, saying he was surely talented. A noble voiced concern about Yuri's safety in the duel. Another noticed someone smiling and asked why, only for the smiling person to point to the arena, urging him to look. In the dueling ground's center, Yuri appeared utterly calm, relaxed, and at ease, showing no tension. This surprised everyone. The smiling person commented confidently that there was no need to worry about Yuri, as his clear confidence spoke volumes. Yuri began recalling the title of Archmage, an extremely high rank few achieved in the Magic Tower. It was said this rank was only granted to a mage who attained original magic, a truly exceptional power. Among various magic types, there was a special form called fate-revealing magic, allowing its user to glimpse the world's destiny. Hernando was the only person in the world to reach that level and master this magic. At that moment, Hernando sat in a casino, reeling from losing a large sum for the first time since acquiring his original magic, leaving him stunned and confused. He wondered inwardly if the loss was mere coincidence, but quickly dismissed it, affirming it wasn't ordinary. Hernando realized that while he could read others' futures and sense luck's flow, he saw nothing about Prince Yuri, deeply unsettling him. Instead of seeing Yuri's future clearly, Hernando had visions, strange, terrifying glimpses of a dark-haired, dark-eyed youth bearing Brial's royal emblem with an unmistakable distant expression, representing the third prince, Yuri. In that horrific vision, Hernando saw Yuri fighting, bloodied, wielding his sword with courage and resolve until he collapsed. From then on, Hernando realized what he thought was random coincidence now clearly centered on one focus, Prince Yuri. Observing Yuri's recent strange and sudden behavior, Hernando was convinced fate-revealing magic was real and usable. He concluded astonishingly that Yuri was a person without a predetermined destiny. Back in the arena, the Imperial Knight called to Yuri, asking if he intended to keep swinging his sword in the air or was truly ready to fight. Prince George asked if Yuri needed more time to prepare, but Yuri calmly and confidently replied he was ready anytime. The knight echoed, saying he was also ready. The king loudly declared the duel would begin now. The two opponents faced each other, fully prepared and cautious, awaiting the first move. Yuri launched the first attack with immense strength and courage, charging without hesitation. The Imperial Knight reacted swiftly, and a fierce exchange of blows began. They traded high-speed, powerful strikes, sparks flying from their swords' clashes. In a critical moment, the knight landed a heavy blow, sending Yuri flying backward with great force. Yuri struggled to rise, gripping his sword with fierce resolve, ready to continue despite the hit. The knight raised his sword, preparing a decisive strike, his face brimming with determination and power. During the fight, the king quietly called Hernando, urging him to focus. Hernando politely asked what the king needed, though he seemed slightly confused. The king seriously asked Hernando's thoughts on the duel's outcome. Hernando hesitated, glancing at the arena where the intense battle had escalated. The duel rapidly intensified with both exchanging powerful, swift blows, sparks flying fiercely. Hernando replied with a mysterious smile, saying he couldn't truly predict the outcome. The king reminded Hernando of how he first came to Brial, guided by celestial omens. Hernando nodded silently. Meanwhile, soldiers in the hall were tense. One asked Captain Saint if it was time to leave. Saint firmly replied, "No." Hernando smiled, telling the king cheerfully he felt relieved, as he wasn't ready to leave Brial. He humbly added that the king gave him more honor than he deserved. The king responded sternly, warning that excessive humility could bring bad luck, then asked clearly if that meant no major mistakes were likely. Instead of answering directly, Hernando smiled and asked, "Who do you think is stronger?" At that moment, the knight unleashed a massively aggressive attack, his sword enveloped in mana. His eyes blazed with a dangerous look, showing resolve to win. The king calmly and confidently answered that Yuri's opponent was stronger. Hernando, serious, quietly said he seemed to agree. Hernando recalled arriving in Brial, certain then that celestial signs led him there. He thought those divine omens showed him the one who could change the world's fate was in Brial, but the sword wasn't yet drawn. That's why he believed he had no reason to stay. Hernando told the king he truly believed his time in Brial was over, but at that moment, Yuri rose, launching a powerful, fierce attack. Standing firm, Yuri, brimming with confidence, declared the time for tests and evasion was over. He charged with astonishing speed, loudly proclaiming it was time to end the duel. The knight, shocked by Yuri's sudden speed, exclaimed in surprise. They exchanged intensely powerful blows, their swords clashing with fierce force. For the first time, the knight felt real fear, realizing the situation was dire and he might die. Prince George and Princess Yekaterina watched with great worry and shock, while the king sat quietly, observing with intense focus. The audience was stunned by the arena's events, one expressing disbelief at Yuri's sudden performance. Hernando smiled with surprise and admiration, saying he couldn't believe Yuri activated the sword's power at that moment. In the arena, the knight froze as his sword shattered from Yuri's sudden strike. Hernando recalled why he came to Brial, chasing celestial signs, but finding someone who defied them. At the ball, George was seen smiling, while Hernando thought life turned to death and death to life, and the present's fate changed when Yuri's sword activated. He continued inwardly, saying each step Yuri took now challenged the heavens' will, confirming Yuri had become someone beyond fate's limits. Yuri smiled joyfully amid the crowd's cheers, and Hernando thought Yuri had surpassed destiny. Hernando expressed deep admiration, thinking Yuri was truly remarkable, eager to see how far he'd go. Yuri smiled confidently, vowing inwardly that from this moment, he would change the world's fate. 5 years later, a vivid and beautiful scene of Brial's palace emerged, exuding a serene atmosphere. Inside, a new maid hurried anxiously, muttering to herself that everything should have gone smoothly, yet wondering how she could have gotten lost despite clear directions. Suddenly, someone called her, startling her greatly. She turned nervously to see a young man with a serious expression and black hair. He asked if she was new here. The maid noted inwardly that his black hair symbolized Brial's royalty. The young man sternly asked what she was doing there at that hour. She tried to respond, but stumbled over her words in nervousness. She urged herself to answer as trained by senior staff, but his harsher tone increased her confusion. She recalled that a bored expression meant the king, a friendly smile meant the crown prince, but confirmed this young man was neither. His sharp, slightly frightening eyes heightened her anxiety. He asked with clear irritation if she was deliberately ignoring him. Inwardly, she was certain this was the third prince. Nervously, she said she had somewhere to be. With evident frustration, he asked if there were secret orders among staff to avoid him, then sternly said he'd use this chance to teach everyone a lesson today. Suddenly, a calm voice said, "Brother," and the newcomer firmly asked what the young man was doing this time. The maid recalled being told of someone known for calm confidence, and she saw a figure approaching quietly, carrying a sword, confirming his identity. The newcomer calmly asked if his brother was bothering the maid again. It was Prince Yuri. Yuri was seen strolling in the palace garden, casually eating, looking completely relaxed. Gesturing self-mockingly in a cute, cartoon-like manner, he repeated his question, asking if his brother was bothering the maid again. The young man sharply replied, "No." The maid timidly offered Yuri a small gift as thanks. Yuri calmly thought the food she gave was delicious, then began wiping his hands with quiet focus. He reflected deeply on the concept of the unarmed state, realizing that in this state, even holding a sword, the strain on his hand lightened through mana use. After deep contemplation, he confirmed inwardly he'd reached that advanced level. Yuri recalled 5 full years had passed since he returned to the past, vividly remembering waking up after being killed by Lauren's sword. Now, standing quietly in the garden, he realized the peaceful days he'd lived were nearing their end. Looking toward the palace, he calmly thought everyone inside was surely talking about him now. Outside the meeting room, Yuri overheard an angry voice from within, irritably asking if they were simply ignoring everything he said. The voice continued, insisting the other side wasn't listening. A tense guard beside Yuri politely informed him the people inside couldn't hear him, too focused on the meeting, suggesting he knock again. Yuri ignored him, forcefully opening the door, causing the guard to shout in panic for him to wait. Yuri entered with a smile, apologizing, saying he knocked earlier but no one heard, so he had to knock louder the second time. An attendee, stunned, wondered how Yuri's action could be considered mere knocking. Yuri approached the king, calmly requesting to join the meeting. The king agreed calmly, telling the attendees to continue. During the meeting, a noble explained they had no reserve forces to send to allied troops. Another angrily objected, accusing him of ignoring the empire's request, but the first noble simply said others could fulfill it, further enraging the second. Yuri clearly recalled this meeting and argument led to disaster in his past life. He remembered how the empire requested allied forces from various nations to repel fierce orc attacks, but also recalled sadly how they failed, allowing orcs to launch brutal assaults, pressuring all involved nations' borders. Strangely, the empire was the only nation unaffected. At that moment, Yuri realized the empire had orchestrated everything from the start. Because of those events, Brial lost many of its best knights, including Liam Flander, who joined the allies. Thus, Yuri firmly resolved never to let those events repeat. A noble objected again, insisting they'd send no troops, sparking heated arguments. Amid the chaos, Yuri intervened calmly and decisively, stating he'd go himself. With clear confidence, he declared he'd personally join the allies and called for others to show sincerity and loyalty. Standing before the council, Yuri confidently stated it was the noble's duty to act in ways that didn't shame Brial's name. The king listened attentively, thinking deeply that he now understood Yuri's true intentions. In the training courtyard, Yuri practiced swordsmanship with intense seriousness and clear focus. Suddenly, someone called loudly, approaching from a distance. Yuri saw it was his brother Cedric, rushing toward him. Cedric, panting, anxiously asked if Yuri really intended to join the allies. Yuri confidently confirmed he did. Cedric, worried, reminded Yuri there was no real need for him to go personally, noting his princely status didn't require it, urging him to be rational. Yuri smiled confidently, saying it was a royal duty he must fulfill. Cedric relented, saying he understood Yuri's thinking, then asked him to return safely, promising to protect the palace in his absence. An observer was pleased by Yuri and Cedric's strong bond, thinking he'd be happier if Cedric caused no more trouble. Yuri jokingly asked Bernard if he was worried too. Bernard calmly said he wasn't overly concerned, believing Yuri would return safely if he didn't act recklessly. Yuri thanked him for his generous concern, but Bernard added seriously, urging caution. Yuri explained to Bernard that dealing with orcs would be tough, as they were stronger and more vicious than people thought. He warned about a particular orc type carrying flags, called orcvon, advising extreme caution. He noted their ferocity and strength made them far more dangerous. Yuri reassured Bernard he had special ways to handle it, prompting Bernard to ask if he had a specific plan. A maid interrupted, calling Yuri, saying a guest awaited with something he'd requested. Yuri confirmed to Bernard he had a very specific plan. In the reception room, Elaine's deputy guild master, Guillermo, sat waiting for Prince Yuri and greeted him respectfully upon arrival. Yuri immediately asked about Elaine, and Guillermo replied she was currently traveling with him there on her behalf. He explained that Elaine continued her journeys despite his suggestion to slow down, to which she responded she was simply doing what she did best. Yuri jokingly asked if that was the only reason for his visit, and Guillermo smiled, saying he brought the item Yuri requested previously. Yuri opened the box Guillermo brought, smiling with satisfaction, saying he did well. Inwardly, he felt immense joy that the long-awaited item had finally arrived. Inside was a special set of daggers called Elementarian. Guillermo cautiously asked if they were truly valuable, as they looked like ordinary decorative blades to him. Yuri replied with great confidence that they were immensely valuable, explaining they were rare artifacts infused with ancient mana. Guillermo, alarmed and anxious, shouted that a dagger was moving on its own. Yuri calmly reassured him he wouldn't die, and Guillermo nervously asked if Yuri was controlling it with mana. He remarked in clear surprise that he didn't know Yuri was so powerful. Yuri responded with a smug, sarcastic smile, saying he hadn't just been playing around. Suddenly, Guillermo noticed a change in Yuri's expression and anxiously asked what was wrong, but Yuri calmly said it didn't matter. Yuri asked Guillermo to send his regards to Elaine and report on the new guild branch's preparations in the Empire. Guillermo agreed and politely left. Yuri lounged comfortably in his chair, then called out clearly that she could come out now. Asana quietly emerged from behind him upon hearing his call. Yuri calmly asked what happened with Goryo. She replied she delivered the warning exactly as requested, explaining with a calm smile that she left it beside Goryo's head on his bed, terrifying him. Yuri laughed cheerfully, saying she did well, adding that Goryo never stopped trying to win Elaine's favor. After a brief silence, Asana cautiously asked if Yuri really intended to join the unified forces, as she'd heard from the maids. Yuri calmly confirmed he did. Asana carefully urged him to be cautious, and Yuri smiled calmly, saying she spoke as if he'd go alone. Surprised, Asana asked what he meant. Yuri smiled, saying she'd come with him. Asana smiled gently, calmly asking if he truly thought she could keep up in battle. Yuri replied confidently that he believed she could. Asana left, saying she'd rather go anywhere with him than return to where she came from, promising to contact him soon. Days later, on the day Yuri returned to the battlefield, Brial's flag was raised high. Cedric called out to Yuri, standing before him, earnestly urging him to take care of himself. Yuri reassured him with a broad smile, confidently saying he was invincible and promising to uphold Brial's honor. Cedric smiled, and Yuri jokingly told him to rest from studying and not strain his eyes. Cedric laughed, assuring he would. He hugged Yuri, sadly bidding him farewell, saying he'd see him soon. Yuri replied with a warm smile that he'd definitely return. At a formal ceremony later, the king announced it would begin. Yuri stood before everyone with utmost seriousness, awaiting the event's start. The king calmly asked if he was nervous, and Yuri replied with strong confidence that he wasn't. The king told Yuri to turn and look behind him. Yuri saw a massive crowd of soldiers, described by the king as precious lives Yuri must protect. Inwardly, Yuri felt sorrow, knowing not all would return safely, but vowed to ensure none faced the tragic deaths of his past life. The king asked with utmost seriousness if Yuri was confident he could do it. Yuri began to say he could, but the king cut him off firmly, saying if he truly believed it, He must take responsibility. Yuri felt a strong killing intent focused on him, instantly recognizing the situation's danger. Shocked, he found his body unresponsive, unable to move. He sensed something dangerous approaching rapidly, realizing it was death itself. Deeply, he knew he'd surely die if he tried to evade the incoming attack. Yuri resolved to find a way to counter the threat, reassuring himself with strong confidence that he could. He unleashed his mana with immense power, manifesting as radiant blue light. He attacked with full force, channeling the blue energy into a powerful, unexpected strike. Yuri's overwhelming power clashed violently with his opponent's, causing a massive explosion and a fierce shockwave. Yuri was shocked to see the king standing before him, smiling confidently, saying he did well. Yuri reeled from what happened. The king noticed something on Yuri's chest, calmly saying it was a substitute for a farewell letter. He sternly ordered Yuri not to be gone too long and to return alive. Yuri firmly replied he would. Yuri stood before the soldiers, boldly declaring with strength and confidence that he was Yuri Bryal, Bryal's third prince. He confidently asked the soldiers to trust him. Raising his sword high, he rallied the army with great passion, ordering them to move, their voices erupting with energy and support. Later, in a dark, mysterious prison, creatures locked behind bars stared from the shadows with glowing red eyes. The aged knight Liam Flander appeared, speaking in a deep voice, telling Yuri they met again after 5 years, addressing him as the third prince. The golden sunset pierced through the dense canopy, casting long shadows as birds chirped, flocking to their nests. Yuri and his team paused in the thick forest to rest after an exhausting journey. The heavy foliage shielded them from the fading sun. As Yuri sipped water, he caught the sound of approaching footsteps. Instinctively, he scanned the surrounding woods. It was Sir Raymond approaching. Recognizing the familiar face, Yuri greeted warmly. "Quite a trek, huh?" He followed up, "Sir Raymond, how far have we gone?" Raymond replied without hesitation. "We've reached Sator's outskirts, Your Highness." He continued, "With a bit more push, we'll hit Sator's coastal town. Then, the plan is to cross Gid and head straight to the rendezvous in Balshad." Raymond, a knight of Bryal, spoke with the calm of a seasoned warrior. Yuri nodded approvingly, smiling. "Well done. Our pace is solid, isn't it?" Yuri asked. "Indeed, Your Highness," Raymond replied confidently. But as they spoke, both sensed a distant gaze watching them. They turned toward the presence in unison. Like a blade slicing through memory, a flashback from 5 years ago flooded Yuri's mind. The voice of the knight who killed him echoed. "It's all your fault." A name crystallized. Roland Frandre, the man who took his life in his past existence. Now, the eldest son of Count Frandre stood before him, a young man with bright, untainted eyes. Roland approached, bowing respectfully. "It's an honor to meet you, Your Highness." He stood tall, hand on chest, introducing himself. "I'm Roland Frandre, sir." Yuri, caught off guard by the deference, replied awkwardly. "Oh, right." Roland looked up, his expression earnest, eyes gleaming with resolve. "There's something I've always wanted to say, even before we met," Roland said. Yuri, surprised, asked, "What's that?" Roland's cheeks flushed, his eyes blazing with long-held anticipation. "I admire you, Your Highness." Yuri blinked. "Huh?" Roland explained. "My father told me about 5 years ago. Since then, you've been my hero." He referenced Yuri drawing his sword to protect a maid. Roland's eyes sparkled as he recounted, voice awed. "You stood up for someone no one else cared about. To me, that's a true knight." Yuri, flustered, helped Roland stand. With an awkward smile, Yuri said, "I've heard a bit about you from your father, Sir Leon. Let's work well together." Roland, elated, replied loudly, "No, Your Highness, serving you is my honor." He stepped aside respectfully, eyes still shining as Raymond approached, saying, "Your Highness, it's time to move." Yuri nodded. "Got it." Raymond's tone grew serious. "If you're unaware, Count Sator isn't known for hospitality. Don't mind if his welcome lacks warmth." As night fell, Sator's lands came into view. A flag at the city gate read, "Welcome, Your Highness." Third Prince. 2 figures awaited at the gate for the Bryal group. Seeing the grand reception, Yuri brightened. Now that's a welcome. Count Sator, Haim Theodore, appeared and bowed deeply. "Welcome, Your Highness." Yuri dismounted, returning a polite nod. "Thank you for the warm welcome, Lord Haim." But Haim's tone turned sly. "We're merely showing respect for a bold young man charging to the front lines." He asked, "Have you fought orcs, Your Highness?" Yuri closed his eyes briefly, replying calmly, "Of course," then paused, adding, "No, I haven't, but I've read about them." Turning to Bryal's knights, Yuri continued, "Honestly, most of our soldiers lack real orc combat experience. I need to learn a few things." Haim let out a dry laugh. "I see, splendid." He stepped closer, hand on chest, bowing slightly with a cunning look. "In that case, Your Highness, would you mind if I offered a gift?" Night blanketed the scene as they were led to a massive locked gate. The lock clicked, and Yuri followed Haim, standing before the slowly opening gate. Haim, holding a torch, entered, gesturing for Yuri to follow. "Right here, Your Highness," Haim said. Yuri led his group inside, each stepping over the threshold with wary eyes. As they entered, the gate slammed shut behind. The knights exchanged anxious glances, unease clear on their faces. Yuri, at the forefront, stayed composed though his expression tightened. He turned to Haim, voice sharp, "Lord Haim, what's this?" Haim remained calm, even smiling as he lit the torch. "No need to worry." The flame illuminated a wide corridor ahead. Yuri sensed something off, glancing subtly at the knights. One stammered, shocked, "That's a massive orc cowered in a cage ahead, the torchlight casting eerie shadows on its emaciated form." Haim, unfazed, eyed the creature and remarked coolly, "You could call it a prisoner, for now," Haim said. As the orc clutched its head in pain, he explained, "To survive, I study everything. Habits, instincts, anything useful for battle." Yuri's face hardened. "So this is your gift, Lord Haim?" Haim nodded, his unsettling smile intact. "Indeed, with war against these beasts looming, no gift is more valuable." Yuri let out a sudden laugh. "Thank you," he said politely, but inwardly, "He's crazier than I thought. He's tortured an orc." Turning to a knight, he asked, "Your name?" The young knight, startled, answered quickly, "Simon Pesu, son of Baron Wolf, Your Highness." Yuri glanced at the trembling orc, asking, "So, Simon, what do you really think of this?" Simon hesitated, visibly uneasy, but said, I think this goes too far. It feels wrong for a prisoner of war," Simon added. Yuri observed him, nodding. "Fair enough, you're entitled to think that." Turning to Haim, he ordered clearly, "Open the cage, Lord Haim." Haim closed his eyes, replying softly, "As you wish." Yuri looked at Simon, confirming, "Simon, right?" "Yes, Your Highness," Simon replied promptly. As the cage opened, the orc stepped out, its heavy steps cracking stone. Yuri's voice rang firm. "This is real combat." Arms crossed, he watched as Simon advanced, sword in hand. Yuri commanded, "Fight the orc." Simon gripped his sword, eyes flashing with resolve. The orc roared, its wild face poised to strike. Its bellow grew louder, frenzied. Then it smashed its head into the ground, shattering stone with terrifying strength. Simon froze, staring at the beast. Fear crept onto his face. He gritted his teeth, standing still. The orc rose, its massive arm reaching, chasing Simon. In panic, Simon turned and fled. Yuri's voice cut through, cold with disappointment. "As I thought, this has gone too far." He's fighting a prisoner stripped of will, Yuri thought, but it was too late. The orc caught Simon, landing a heavy punch near his ear, denting his helmet. Simon cried out in pain. A comrade shouted, "Simon!" But Simon couldn't respond. The orc wrapped its arm around Simon's neck, squeezing. Simon flailed helplessly. Yuri's commanding voice boomed, "Everyone, prepare to fight." At the peak of tension, Haim interjected calmly, "Relax. We've severed most of its tendons." Yuri paused, processing. Haim stepped forward, voice low, "Your Highness, this is an orc. One moment of carelessness, and it'll tear you apart." Haim's voice turned urgent. The soldier remained trapped in the orc's massive grip, its arm tightening around the young man's neck. "Your Highness, we must save him," Haim said. But Yuri stayed calm, his resolute gaze fixed on the scene. "Easy. We've severed most of its tendons. It can't die, but it can still inflict pain. The orc roared, its ferocious bellow echoing through the dungeon, its hold unrelenting. Yuri tilted his head, voice tinged with curiosity. Is it taking him hostage? Haim frowned, replying quickly, I'll summon the interpreter. He barked at a cloaked figure nearby. Translate. From beneath the cloak, Corey stepped out timidly. Corey, shy and enigmatic, stood in stark contrast to the authoritative atmosphere. Sigh? Corey, Haim repeated, urging him. Yuri glanced at the newcomer, murmuring, Corey. With a trembling voice, Corey replied, Why yes, sir. He raised a hand to his ear, closing his eyes, focusing on the orc's growls. Moments later, he translated gravely. It says, If you don't drop your weapons, I'll start breaking bones, starting with this night. As the threat landed, the orc tightened its grip, snapping the soldier's bone with a sickening crack. The young man screamed in agony. Uh-huh, Yuri shouted, voice sharp and decisive. Hernando. Yuri stepped back, making way. Your turn. Hernando advanced, conjuring a radiant green magic circle. Got it. A surge of green energy erupted, enveloping the orc, making it howl in pain. Hernando squinted, shouting, Now. Yuri grinned confidently, good, and charged. In a flash, Yuri reached the soldier, yanking him free from the monster's grip. Retreating swiftly, he set the injured man down. The orc, enraged at losing its hostage, roared earth-shatteringly. Everyone instinctively stepped back before the towering beast, its red eyes blazing with fury. Yuri quickly assessed the enemy, turning to Haim. This isn't a normal orc, is it? Haim, eyes locked on the creature, replied, No, sir. Small but battle-hardened. A horrific memory flashed in his mind. The orc devouring a knight during its capture, claiming countless lives. A young soldier, voice trembling with rage, shouted, Bastard. I don't care if it's a prisoner. I'll kill it myself, he declared. Yuri turned calmly, voice soft, easy. The soldier, anxious, stammered, Your Highness. Yuri's gaze sharpened, gesturing behind. I'm not stopping you. Just look back. The orc's shadow stretched across the floor, advancing with slow, thunderous steps. Yuri warned, They're looking for weaknesses. This one's nothing special. Plains orcs are worse. He stepped forward, placing a hand on the young soldier's shoulder, voice low, Focus. This is training. Learn to kill orcs, Yuri said. The young soldiers gripped their swords, blades glinting faintly green, eyes fixed on the approaching orc. One orc, wielding a blazing torch, roared before hurling it through the air. Hernando stepped ahead of Yuri and Haim, raising a magical shield just in time to block the torch. Sparks flew as it struck, the orc staggering back, coughing blood, its face twisted in pain. In the chaos, a young earth-attuned soldier appeared behind the beast, driving his sword through its back. The orc stumbled, gasping, then collapsed with a thud. Who? Yuri clapped slowly, an approving smile. Well done. But none of the soldiers looked satisfied, their faces grim. Noticing this, Yuri asked, smiling lightly, still not happy. He approached the orc's corpse in a pool of red liquid, speaking with understanding. I get it. This was just a test against a target that couldn't even fight back. But this experience boosts your battlefield survival odds. Be grateful to Lord Haim, Yuri said. Haim placed a hand on his chest, bowing slightly, voice serious. You may feel this defies knightly codes. He turned away, tone firm. But these monsters don't deserve respect. Follow me. There's something else I want you to see. The group followed Haim, leaving the orc motionless on the cold dungeon floor. These seemed like mere weaklings. The dungeon lay shrouded in darkness, lit only by faint lamps along the path. The true horror awaited deeper in the orc camp. Haim led with his torch, unlocking a creaking heavy door, revealing the orc's grim reality. Dim light illuminated a ghastly scene. Yuri frowned, face darkening, murmuring, So that's it. Beside him, a young soldier stood stunned. Before them were emaciated, starving orcs, bones protruding under pale skin. Chains bound their ankles as they clawed desperately toward the light. These were hybrid orcs. Yuri looked down, voice pensive. More than I thought. Haim nodded calmly. Yes, and extracting them wasn't easy. He explained, orcs capture humans and treat them like toys. These are what's left after their games. A soldier covered his mouth, overwhelmed by nausea. Yuri turned to Haim, asking softly, "Do you hate orcs?" Haim fell silent, then turned away, replying with fierce conviction, "I hate them until the day I die." Yuri stood still, regarding the old knight with quiet respect. He tightened his grip on the sword at his hip. Everyone has a lifelong enemy. For me, it's the Empire, he thought. A memory flashed. Haim sitting silently in the rain, tears streaming. For him, it's orcs. They say he found his son's body in an orc village. That sight must still haunt him. Golden dawn light flooded the majestic castle, illuminating its towering spires. A voice called, snapping Yuri's attention, "Your Highness." Haim appeared, pushing Corey forward. "Please take this boy along." Yuri smiled, recognizing him. "The one from the dungeon." Haim nodded lightly. "Yes, his name's Corey." Yuri praised, smile widening. "Speaking Orcish is a rare skill." Corey hesitated, replying slowly. Sir, there's something I need to tell you." Yuri raised a hand, cutting him off. "Enough." "I know." Corey blinked, confused. "Yes, sir." Yuri continued. "I know what's worrying you, so don't overthink it." Yuri placed an object in Corey's hand. "I'm giving you this, so do your job well." Corey stared at it, shocked and flustered. But something this valuable." Yuri ignored Corey's concern, turning to call, "Sir Raymond." With a calm smile, Yuri asked, "The border's ahead, right?" Raymond nodded. "Yes, some monsters, but no ambush concerns." Yuri closed his eyes, shaking his head lightly. "No, you're wrong." His voice hardened, echoing through the mountains. "The monsters themselves are the real threat to the border, like orcs. We must eliminate them all." In a dense forest, merchants pulled a cargo wagon, horse hooves clopping on rough terrain. From the shadows, a scarred man emerged, his dangerous smile glinting with killing intent. With a fluid motion, he swung his sword at them. Blood sprayed, staining the trees and earth red. Yuri led the troops with commanding presence, his horse galloping powerfully. Glancing over his shoulder, he noted the figures trailing behind. He spotted Corey riding a smaller horse beside the towering Hernando, thinking the team would ride if they knew Corey's half-orc. A satisfied smile flickered. "I chose him as my personal guard. Hernando will handle it." What a mess. Unfurling a map, Yuri studied it, murmuring thoughtfully. He raised a hand, calling loudly, "Jared." From behind, Jared responded promptly, "Yes, Your Highness." Urging his horse forward, Jared joined Yuri, peering at the map. Yuri's tone turned stern, pointing to a spot. "From here, you're on scouting duty. Mark explored areas and report back." Jared tensed. "Scouting? But this place is crawling with bandits." His brow furrowed, worry evident. "They'll scatter if I get close." "You sure?" Yuri, unwavering, kept his eyes on the map. "We'll hunt them down. They're harassing merchants near the border." "Unacceptable." He smirked, voice sardonic. "What's that? Lacking confidence? Not like a talent like you. The other soldiers are too tense for this task. I'm just a young prince, Green. But you, a swordsmanship prodigy. Don't tell me you can't grasp ordinary fear." Stung by the sharp words, Jared exploded, shouting, "Fine, I'll go now." Jared spurred his horse, charging off. Yuri burst into hearty laughter, clearly pleased. "Good go. I like that fire." Raymond rode up, a sly smile playing on his lips. "You seem fond of him." Yuri replied airily, still grinning. "Fond's a stretch. I'm just guiding him." Turning, in high spirits, Yuri said, "Sir Raymond, can I ask something? It's getting dull." Raymond chuckled politely. "Of course, Your Highness." The question caught him off guard. "What do you fight for?" Yuri asked, voice calm but curious. Raymond paused, surprised. It's been a while since anyone asked. His eyes grew solemn, glancing at Yuri. "My answer's old but true." Yuri nodded. "I'm listening." "For Brial's safety," Raymond replied. Yuri flashed a pleased smile. "Not bad at all." Tightening his reins, he shouted, "Maintain marching speed. I'm checking on Jared." Yuri galloped after Jared's trail. In the forest, at a clearing, a group set up camp, pitching tents around a fire. A bound prisoner was thrown to the ground, crying out, "Ah!" A man stepped forward, barking, "Quiet." Yuri crouched, gripping a sharp dagger, his voice low and menacing. making the prisoner tremble. You value your life, don't you? From above, Jared called through a spyglass. Your Highness, I found it. He pointed to the mountain's base, where a group gathered. That's the bandits' hideout. Yuri nodded. Well done, Jared. He turned to the prisoner. You said you scouted alone? Your commander sent you out solo? Sure. The tightly bound prisoner stammered. Why, yes, that's right. Trembling, he added, I'm just a rookie. I don't know much. Yuri narrowed his eyes, noticing a red pendant around the man's neck. He yanked the cord, startling the prisoner, who yelped, Hey! Holding the pendant, Yuri examined the red glow from its gem. What's this? He asked coldly. The prisoner shrank. It's not mine. The captain gave it to me, said to wear it on patrol. Yuri's face darkened, drawing a gleaming sword, radiant like a magical artifact. Looks like a magical item. What enchantment's on it? I don't know. I swear, the prisoner cried in fear. Yuri stepped closer, voice menacing. Is that so? Then I'll ask your captain myself. He smirked, turning on his heel. The sun sank behind the mountains, casting long shadows over the forest. Yuri gripped the spyglass, observing with razor-sharp focus. Jared returned with knights, reporting. As ordered, we've positioned forces along all escape routes. Yuri lowered the spyglass, beaming. Excellent. So, if I stir chaos from within, they'll fall into our trap, right? Jared blinked, confused. Wait, stir chaos? Yuri leapt onto his horse, shouting, Move now. Arrive late, and there'll be nothing left to share. Understood. He charged off, vanishing into the distance. Wait, Your Highness. Jared yelled, but Yuri didn't look back. Going alone is too risky. Yuri yanked the reins, roaring, Soldiers! Charge! The bellow shook the camp. The bandits froze. Huh? What's that noise? Two looked up, eyes widening as Yuri stormed into their lavish feast. Plates flew, crashing. Bandits recoiled, collapsing, stunned by the lone knight. Yuri grinned. Pleasure to meet you, bandits. Darkness cloaked the forest. Jared and the cavalry arrived, breathless. Your Highness, Jared called, awestruck at the scene. Yuri sat casually atop a groaning bandit, warming by the fire. Around him, defeated bandits lay scattered or bound. You're late, Yuri teased. Jared approached. Why take such a reckless risk? Too dangerous. Yuri raised a brow. Then why didn't you keep up? Now you're just whining. He turned to Raymond. Any escapees? Raymond replied sternly. None. All handled. Not one escaped, and we've no casualties, Raymond said. Yuri nodded, grabbing a skewer of meat. Good. Take their meat. Prepare dinner. Everyone grabbed skewers, roasting over the crackling fire. Dinner was simple grilled skewers. Jared commented. Doesn't smell particularly great. Yuri grinned proud. Yuri led the troops with commanding presence, his horse galloping powerfully. Glancing over his shoulder, he noted the figures trailing behind. He spotted Corey riding a smaller horse beside the towering Hernando, thinking the team would ride if they knew Corey's half-orc. A satisfied smile flickered. I chose him as my personal guard. Hernando will handle it. What a mess. Unfurling a map, Yuri studied it, murmuring thoughtfully. He raised a hand, calling loudly. Jared. From behind, Jared responded promptly. Yes, Your Highness. Urging his horse forward, Jared joined Yuri, peering at the map. Yuri's tone turned stern, pointing to a spot. From here, you're on scouting duty. Mark explored areas and report back. Jared tensed. Scouting? However, given her precarious position in the kingdom's power struggle, she was known to be fiercely sensitive about her achievements and performance. Rumors swirled that she'd do anything to gain recognition in this campaign. Hearing this, Yuri rubbed his chin, his expression pensive. A princess of the Holy Kingdom. Raymond stepped forward, asking, Shall I investigate her further, Your Highness? Yuri crossed his arms, flashing a calm smile. No need. That's unnecessary. He gazed at the night sky, where the moon shone brightly amidst the darkness. A spark of curiosity flickered across his face. I'll meet her myself in Gid. The Allied forces' rendezvous was a checkpoint for those heading to Balshad, a neutral supply hub. Troublemakers faced steep consequences, and if convicted, they'd be judged under Gid's strict laws. As an autonomous region, everyone was bound by its rules. From the barracks, An authoritative voice rang out. Sir Raymond, ensure our troops maintain discipline before entering the city, including the knights. Raymond replied sharply. Understood. We'll halt outside the city to ensure no missteps. I'll meet with the city lord. The city lord greeted them warmly upon seeing Yuri. An honor to meet a prince of Bryal. Yuri extended his hand, responding courteously. Thank you for the warm welcome. Bryal deeply appreciates your support. The lord laughed heartily. No trouble at all. We're fully committed to aiding the allied forces. Sitting down, still jovial, he continued. When your father, King Bryal, was young, he was famed for fighting orcs. I bet they'll scatter knowing his son's here. Huh. Yuri smiled, sitting across. I'll do my best. Just then, a steward's voice called from outside. My lord. The lord turned curiously. The steward entered, whispering in his ear in Yuri's presence. After listening, the lord turned back, still smiling. The Holy Kingdom's princess has arrived. Would you join me to greet her? Yuri nodded politely. Of course. Footsteps echoed in the hall. A woman entered, prompting the lord to stand and greet. Welcome. In the radiant glow of the royal hall, a female knight in pristine white armor appeared, exuding strength and confidence. She was Sivilla our saint, the second princess of the Holy Kingdom. With a stern expression, she introduced herself. I am the second princess of the Holy Kingdom. You may call me Sivilla our saint. The lord smiled warmly, rubbing his hands. An honor to meet a princess in such a place. Sivilla paused, then glanced at Yuri, asking bluntly, Are you the lord's attendant? The question caught Yuri off guard, but her gaze remained firm, voice stiff. I need to speak privately with the lord. Please leave us. Sensing the misunderstanding, the lord quickly clarified. Ah, princess, he's. Before he could finish, one of Sivilla's knights barked. Silence. The princess speaks, and you sit. Show respect. Yuri, still calm, merely said, Oh, me? Then he dropped a bombshell that stunned the room. Everyone's jaws dropped. I'm the third prince of Bryal. The lord wiped sweat from his brow, visibly embarrassed. The shouting knight panicked. I also serve in Bryal's army. Your Highness, please forgive me, he cried, clearly flustered. Yuri smiled dryly to himself. Guess I should dress like the other knights instead of a wanderer, Yuri thought. The knights bowed deeply, apologizing in unison. Sivilla, standing aside, covered her face in silent regret. We deeply apologize. Please forgive us, Your Highness. As the tension eased, the two sat across from each other. Yuri broke the silence, voice teasing. Do I look that cheap? Sivilla gave an awkward laugh. Haha, of course not. Regaining composure, she formally apologized. I'm sorry for earlier. Forget it, Yuri said, flashing a friendly smile, clearly amused. Shall I introduce myself again? He pointed to his nameplate. I'm Yuri, third prince of Bryal. They shook hands politely. Nice to meet you, he added. Still cheerful, Yuri asked with childlike curiosity. How old are you, Sivilla? 20, she replied coolly. I'm 18, just 2 years apart. Not much difference. So, we can be friends, right? He grinned warmly, sunlight glinting off his hair through the curtains. Tilting his head, he added, Forget the formalities. Great to meet you, Sivilla. Caught off guard by his casual approach, Sivilla let out a soft, ah, as the lord smiled approvingly. Wonderful. Making friends before battling orcs is always good. Yuri, still energetic, asked, You cool with that, Sivilla? His ease flustered her, and she replied slowly, yes, fine. Noticing something, Yuri narrowed his eyes. I didn't see any units on the way here. Did you arrive ahead with just your knights, Sivilla? She nodded slightly. Yes. The main force arrives tomorrow. Yuri rubbed his chin, gazing distantly. Hope they're okay. Sivilla frowned, voice stern. The Holy Kingdom's army follows strict discipline. You think something's wrong? Yuri chuckled. Oh, I meant external threats, not internal. Orcs often lurk near borders. They're crafty ambushers despite their size. The lord nodded. Indeed, their cunning belies their appearance. Yuri smiled, though strained. I'm sure it'll be fine. It's the Holy Kingdom's army, after all. He glanced at Sivilla. But you should stay vigilant. The scene shifted to a sunlit central square, bustling with vibrant market stalls. A familiar voice spoke. What do you think of the Holy Knights? Yuri and Hernando strolled, chatting casually. Outdated, Hernando replied. The princess must be struggling. He rubbed his chin, scanning around. See anything worthwhile in her? Hernando asked. Yuri slowed, pulling out the red pendant taken from the bandits, studying it. I think so, but he held it up. You sure this was bought here? Hernando eyed the jewelry shops, confirming. Yes, only one place around here sells these. Yuri nodded, moving on. I remember what he said. This attracts orcs. Specifically, if they smell it, they go berserk and attack. Sounds like a war trigger. They paused before a shop, eyeing items suspiciously. One muttered, magical tools. Look fragile. Agreed. I doubt they even work. The old shopkeeper, fed up with their insults, snapped, fists clenched. Don't buy, then get out. The two turned and left nonchalantly. Nothing similar. Maybe sold out, one said. Yuri smirked, slightly disappointed. Pity. Hernando's eyes lit up, pointing ahead. Your Highness, look. A group of soldiers entered a tavern. They're gambling in there, Hernando said. Yuri's face darkened, eyes cold. Brial soldiers gambling. Unacceptable. Both gritted their teeth, striding toward the tavern with resolve. We can't be a respectable army if we tolerate this shameful behavior, Yuri said. Hernando nodded. Agreed, Your Highness. Before a grand building's gate, knights gathered. One asked, How was the talk with the Lord? Civila replied coldly, Fine. He smirked, voice dripping with sarcasm. I heard it all. Brial's prince is unreliable. He trailed off, letting the insult linger. This was Finnick, the Holy Kingdom's vice-captain. Continuing with disdain, Finnick said, How can a guy like him lead? Calling Brial a knight's ballad? Laughably outdated. Civila, annoyed, warned, Speaking behind backs doesn't suit you, Finnick. He brushed it off. So what? Look at him dressed like a lowlife mercenary. Civila's face tensed as Finnick kept insulting. His behavior's worse than I thought. Once the orc issue's done, I bet we'll be short a prince. Civila snapped. Enough. Stop. Finnick relented grudgingly. Fine. She asked, voice firm. How's the regular troops' status? Finnick passed by, glancing insolently. Nothing for you to worry about, princess. I'll handle it. Civila watched the troops fade into the distance, muttering, We start patrols now. Her eyes dropping with disappointment. The sky darkened. Laughter and noise spilled from a lively tavern. Finnick led the holy knights inside, but his face soured at the sight within. Who are they? Finnick frowned. A knight replied, eyeing the cheerful group. I think Brial soldiers. Finnick, irritated, scoffed, letting common soldiers into the city. What kind of military discipline is this? Another knight said, They're gambling. The soldiers seemed jovial. Finnick narrowed his eyes, Yuri's lackeys. Next, we'll see Yuri's gambling addict join in. No rules at all. A knight chuckled dryly. Their commander probably doesn't either. Finnick's tone hardened. This can't stand. As holy knights, we can't just watch. Without hesitation, Finnick took a deep breath, bellowing, What are you doing? His voice echoed through the tavern, freezing everyone. Brial knights and Raymond turned, surprised. You think this is a playground? Finnick roared, raising a hand like a scolding teacher. Even in foreign lands, I can't believe this. You think the Allied forces are a joke? His words were cut off. A firm hand landed on Finnick's shoulder. He stiffened, turning slowly. Yuri stood there, a calm smile on his face, asking, And who are you? Finnick, visibly irritated, swatted Yuri's hand away and glared. The third prince, he snapped, voice sharp. He glanced at Raymond's men. Actions like these only bring trouble for you and your knights. A smug smirk spread across his face. Seems you still don't get it. You should hand them swords, not cards. Though I doubt you even know how to hold a sword properly, Finnick mocked. Yuri let out a cold laugh, his eyes narrowing, icy and focused. I asked your name. Doesn't the Holy Kingdom's army have ranks? The question threw Finnick off, stammering. Before he could respond, an authoritative voice rang out, turning both their heads. What's going on here? Civila strode in, her presence commanding, hand on hip. Sir Finnick, didn't you say you'd patrol? Finnick bowed stiffly, clearly annoyed. My apologies. His face tightened with suppressed anger. Civila wasted no time. Go, she ordered curtly. Finnick complied, storming off with a few men, not without a pointed glance at Sivilla. She narrowed her eyes, watching him go. Turning to Yuri, she sighed. I apologize for him. Yuri just smiled, waving it off. No need. Sivilla's hand brushed her sword, remarking, it's hard keeping everyone in line. But is a holy army so easily swayed? Sivilla turned toward the door, pausing. I'll repay this debt another time. Yuri chuckled. Sure, next time. He watched her leave, pensive. Raymond's words echoed. She's losing ground in influence, so she clings to results. Yuri mused. So that's what he meant, a flicker of amusement crossing his face. He brushed the thought aside, returning to the table, grinning. Anyway, next round? A young soldier cheered. My turn. Yuri laughed. Good spirit. Outside, Finnick clenched his fists, muttering furiously, damn it. He turned to Sivilla, snapping. Your Highness, don't tell me you're siding with that arrogant prince. She replied flatly. Is this the time for that? Finnick, fuming, raised his voice. Haven't I told you his actions are too reckless? A voice interrupted. Your Highness, Sir Finnick. Both turned to see a knight galloping up. He dismounted, armor scratched and muddy, dropping to one knee, panting, forgive my rudeness, but I bring urgent news. Sivilla sensed trouble. What is it? His next words stunned them. The main force was ambushed by orcs. Under moonlight, Sivilla sat tall on her horse, calm, fully armored with helmet. Your Highness, you're leaving now? The Lord asked, genuine concern in his voice. With all due respect, shouldn't you request aid from Brial's forces? Seeing his worry, Sivilla paused, deep in thought. The Lord pressed cautiously. If your goal is to minimize casualties, surely it's better to. A gruff voice cut in. What are you saying? Finnick appeared on horseback, glaring down, voice sharp. The Holy Kingdom's affairs are for the Holy Kingdom to handle. Or do you think we'll lose to lowly orcs? The Lord waved his hands, laughing nervously. Haha, I didn't mean that. Sivilla gently intervened. It's fine, my lord. Under moonlight, her aura radiated strength and grace. She smiled, reassuring. I understand your concern, but we can end this swiftly. Thank you for caring. She spurred her horse, shouting, forward. Her knightly unit charged into the forest under the night sky. The Lord stood, hands clasped behind, watching them vanish. A young soldier muttered, unbelievable. The Holy Kingdom's so stubborn. Wrinkles creased the Lord's face, worry in his eyes, as he sighed. Especially that vice-captain, the stubbornest. We've no choice. Turning to the soldier, he ordered, go to Brial's camp now. Find a third prince. The soldier bowed deeply. Yes, sir. Hurry. The Lord urged, voice tense. There's no time. Under faint moonlight, Raymond approached Yuri, who was reading a parchment. Your Highness, what's it say? Yuri didn't look up, face grim. The Holy Kingdom's main force was ambushed by orcs. Yuri frowned. The Alliance requests we clear nearby orcs to settle a debt. Raymond, uneasy, asked. But the request didn't come from the Holy Kingdom, right? Yuri looked up, recalling Finnick's cold demeanor, muttering. She seems stubbornly proud. He turned to Raymond, ordering, prepare to move immediately. Raymond placed a hand on his chest, bowing slightly. As you command. Yuri glanced at a young soldier nearby, asking, your name? The soldier knelt, replying respectfully, Roy, your Highness. All right, Roy, Yuri said. Go to the tavern near the magic market, summon Brial's forces. Lowering his voice, smirking slyly, he added, tell them I'll only take the first 10 who arrive. That'll make them scramble. Roy nodded. Yes, your Highness. Yuri gripped the parchment, watching the soldier ride into the night. Setting it on the table, he dusted his hands, grinning with relish. Now for a little night ride? Later, Finnick, visibly irritated, swatted Yuri's hand away and glared. The third prince, he snapped, voice sharp. He glanced at Raymond's men. Actions like these only bring trouble for you and your knights. A smug smirk spread across his face. Seems you still don't get it. You should hand them swords, not cards. Though I doubt you even know how to hold a sword properly, Finnick mocked. Yuri let out a cold laugh, his eyes narrowing, icy and focused. I asked your name. Doesn't the Holy Kingdom's army have ranks? The question threw Finnick off, stammering. Before he could respond, an authoritative voice rang out, turning both their heads. What's going on here? Sivila strode in, her presence commanding, hand on hip. Sir Finnick, didn't you say you'd patrol? Finnick bowed stiffly, clearly annoyed. My apologies. His face tightened with suppressed anger. Sivila wasted no time. Go, she ordered curtly. Finnick complied, storming off with a few men, not without a pointed glance at Sivila. She narrowed her eyes, watching him go. Turning to Yuri, she sighed. I apologize for him. Yuri just smiled, waving it off. No need. Sivila's hand brushed her sword, remarking, It's hard keeping everyone in line. But is a holy army so easily swayed? Sivila turned toward the door, pausing. I'll repay this debt another time. Yuri chuckled. Sure, next time. He watched her leave, pensive. Raymond's words echoed. She's losing ground in influence, so she clings to results. Yuri mused. So that's what he meant, a flicker of amusement crossing his face. He brushed the thought aside, returning to the table, grinning. Anyway, next round? A young soldier cheered. My turn. Yuri laughed. Good spirit. Outside, Finnick clenched his fists, muttering furiously, Damn it. He turned to Sivila, snapping. Your Highness, don't tell me you're siding with that arrogant prince. She replied flatly. Moments earlier, the holy knights of the Holy Kingdom galloped at a breathtaking pace. The thunderous clatter of hooves roared like a storm, shaking the skies, with clouds of dust swirling like gray mists. Wind whistled through their gleaming armor. Sivila, eyes tense, silently tightened her grip on the reins. She thought to herself, I was too careless. I should have anticipated an ambush. Yuri's words echoed in her mind. Orcs sometimes strike from within the border. Biting her plump lips, she cursed her lack of caution. Her hair fluttered in the wind, like a fragile flame before an impending tempest. Before her loomed a ferocious orc legion, radiating murderous intent, their axes and spears glinting under the fading sunlight. The clash between the Holy Kingdom's soldiers and the orcs raged fiercely. Metal clashed, anguished screams mingled, and blood stained the earth. Fallen bodies lay scattered, like wilted flowers on a field of death. Sivila charged forward, her gaze resolute. She thought, All right, our banner still stands. Turning to Finnick, she shouted over the howling wind. We'll charge straight for their commander. Finnick, his battle-scarred face stern, nodded, Understood. He bellowed, voice deep like a tolling bell. Form up. We charge. The soldiers behind roared in unison, their morale soaring. Charge. Charge. Sivila, clutching a pendant etched with a holy symbol, began to pray, her voice trembling yet devout. O Holy One, your servants stand in awe. Grant us strength. As her prayer ended, a pure light radiated from her, enveloping her and her warhorse. The radiant aura seemed to freeze the battlefield for a moment. Raising her sword high, Sivila shouted, All of you, faster. But as they neared the orcs, a sudden anomaly struck. A massive skull, exuding thick, dark miasma, materialized in the air. Its eyes glowed an eerie red, like twin flames of hell. Below, a dark magic circle appeared, emitting a terrifying energy that shook the air. As the circle completed, the ground cracked violently, a fierce earthquake rocking the battlefield. Debris flew, and the sound of splitting earth roared like a beast. Sivila gripped her reins, yelling in panic, It's a trap. But it was too late. She and her soldiers were sucked into a bottomless pit, their desperate screams echoing. She reached out, clawing at sharp rock walls. A painful thought struck her. Have I made another wrong call? Old memories flooded back. People once praised her divine awakening as a child. You're extraordinary, they said, their voices warm like spring sunlight. To meet their expectations, she trained in swordsmanship. But the day she defeated her brother in a duel, she realized it was her worst mistake. His cold eyes forced her to the battlefield, fearing she'd steal his inheritance. He placed a hand on her head, praying, Your soul will be redeemed and ascend to heaven if you fight for our Holy One. Falling into the abyss now, Sivila cursed silently, What nonsense. Gripping her sword, she muttered, He just wanted me dead. Glancing at her trembling soldiers, their faces pale from shock, she stood and shouted, Everyone, regroup. But then she looked at her arm, murmuring, "Is this oil?" A thick, black, viscous liquid coated her hand, reeking foully. Looking up, she froze in horror. Orcs surrounded the pit's rim, their torches flickering like demonic eyes. Sivilla trembled, eyes wide, heart pounding. An orc raised its torch, roaring as if signaling. Her face darkened, thoughts racing. Ambush, fire trap. What do I do to survive? She gritted her teeth, whispering, "What am I living for?" Suddenly, a voice called from above, "Sivilla." An orc's head was severed, black blood spraying. The voice continued, "Open your eyes." Sivilla looked up. Yuri stood at the pit's edge, torch in hand, eyes cold yet caring. He asked, "You okay?" He tossed down a rope, helping them climb. As he grabbed Sivilla's hand, pulling her up, his warm grip calmed her. She said shyly, "Thanks, I owe you." Yuri smiled lightly. "No big deal." A figure approached, kneeling. "Your Highness, I, Finnick, Vice Captain of the Holy Kingdom, greet the third Prince of Brial. Forgive my rudeness at the tavern." He continued, "I, Finnick, will never forget today." Sivilla thought, "Finnick's apologizing?" Yuri chuckled, "I accept your apology. Let the Holy Kingdom aid Brial when we face trouble." A piercing cry interrupted, turning Yuri's head. The orc battle raged on. An orc blew a horn, its haunting sound like a death knell. Yuri tightened his grip on his sword, face cold. But suddenly, the orcs turned and fled. Soldiers cheered. They're retreating. They failed to assassinate the holy knights. Yuri shouted, "Pursue them. Let none escape." The troops roared, "Yes, sir." Yuri's gaze fixed on the orc's banner. His brow furrowed, muttering, "That's..." An orc stomped, cracking the earth. It turned, roaring. Sivilla shouted, "Yuri, that's orcful." But Yuri raised a hand, silencing her. The orcful drew its bow, dark miasma radiating from it. A black arrow shot toward Yuri, tearing through the air. Calmly, his eyes flared with blue mana. Drawing his sword, he lunged, slicing the arrow in half. Watching the fragments fall, Yuri said, "The orc commander seems a bit mad at me. Guess I fell for their trap." The protagonist envelopes himself in a shimmering, pale green aura as he strides forward slowly. From behind, Princess Sivilla watches, a flicker of worry crossing her face, yet she doesn't reach out to stop him. Yuri crouches slightly to gather momentum, saying calmly, "I'll be right back." His words startle number 3, who shouts, "Hey, Yuri, you're not going in alone, are you?" But before Sivilla can react, our knight charges, barreling toward the orc horde with explosive speed. The monsters aren't fools. They immediately counterattack. One, moving swiftly, grabs a spear from nowhere and hurls it at Yuri. The weapon tears through the air like a bullet, roaring toward its target. Yuri draws his sword from his back, eyes wide, locked on the spear's trajectory. He tracks its path, and just as it nears him, a memory from 5 years ago floods back. His uncle, Burner, spoke of the soul-splitting technique on the battlefield. Countless variables, terrain, environment, too many to track. The core was honing adaptability into instinct. "But your soul-splitting is different, young master," Burner had said. Yuri instantly grasps the situation, his instincts pinpointing the optimal path, transforming it into a perfect strike. Back then, a young, impatient Yuri had grumbled, "Can't you explain it simpler?" Burner sighed, adding, "When the time comes, you'll understand. Your body will act first, guiding you to the most effective way to defeat the enemy." Now, Yuri finally grasps the true meaning. A faint smile curves his lips. With precise timing, he tilts his head, effortlessly dodging the deadly spear. But it's not over. His senses flare, detecting another threat. He looks up to see a second spear hurtling toward him. Reacting instantly, Yuri ducks low, then springs into the air, narrowly avoiding the spear as it slams into the ground, leaving a deep crater. With expert precision, he lands lightly on the embedded spear, using its leverage to launch himself above the orcs. Facing him, 2 orcs stand stunned by how easily he evaded both attacks. They have no time to react before Yuri, midair, slashes down with 2 lightning-fast strikes, each piercing an orc's chest. Blood sprays like a fountain as they collapse. Nearby, the remaining orcs watch in horror as their kin falls swiftly. Roaring with rage, They charge Yuri in a full-on assault. Assessing the situation, Yuri weighs his options. 1 against 3. A direct clash is risky, but it's been ages since I've hit the battlefield. No way I'm missing this. A wild spark of excitement flashes across his face. His eyes widen, focusing ahead. Soon, faint slashing paths form in his vision. Yes, I see it. The perfect sword path. Without hesitation, Yuri follows the mental trajectory, unleashing a flurry of strikes at dizzying speed. The orc before him only manages a scream before being sent to the afterlife. The 2 green-skinned beasts behind fare no better, shrieking as Yuri's blade silences them forever. As silence falls, blood pools on the ground, orc corpses scattered everywhere. Calmly, Yuri sheathes his sword at his hip, reflecting quietly on the fight. My body's still not fully in sync with my mind, but this'll do for now. His eyes drift to a spear on the ground. He picks it up, raises it overhead, and bellows, voice echoing across the battlefield, "Orcful." Not far off, the massive orc turns at the call. Yuri grips the spear tightly. Without a moment's pause, he cloaks it in a radiant aura and hurls it with thunderous speed. Orcful instinctively raises his twin axes to block, but Yuri smiles with unshakable confidence. He wasn't aiming for the orc itself. Instead, the spear strikes the enemy's banner, shattering it on impact. The surrounding orcs visibly crumble, their morale plummeting. Orcful's eyes burn red with fury. After a moment of struggling to compose himself, Val accepts the reality. The battle is lost. His lips move, muttering a retreat order for the surviving orcs. In Yuri's mind, I thought they'd all rush me. Guess they decided it's not worth more losses. A smirk appears on his face. Hope that pays them back for the arrow earlier. A worried voice calls from behind. Number 3, the princess. Yuri, are you hurt? Yuri turns with a cheerful grin. Nope, I'm fine. Looks like it's over, huh? Then, playfully, he asks, so, Sivilla, how's it feel to win your first battle as a league member? Her face softens into a gentle smile. Thanks to you. I couldn't have done it without you. The scene shifts to Orcful, still seething from defeat. Unable to restrain himself, he slams his fist into a nearby tree, leaving a deep dent. His body radiates killing intent, a clear sign this monster has reached a new level of rage. The scene shifts to a lively tavern in the heart of town, buzzing with the scent of ale and raucous laughter. A sudden shout cuts through the noise. No way. Jared, gripping his mug tightly, his other hand clenched into a fist, trembles with excitement. He speaks with fervor. I'm serious. His eyes gleam as he recalls. Prince Yuri dove in, snatching the torch mid-air just as it was about to hit the fire pit. Honestly, unreal. 2 nearby soldiers exclaim in unison, one with an A, the other an O, their eyes shining with awe. Another soldier, skeptical, chimes in. Rumors say Prince Yuri's useless in combat. I thought he was just a gambler, always partying and playing cards. Gotta admit, he's a damn good card player. Roland, beside him, retorts proudly. That gossip's all nonsense. He thumps his chest. Clearly, he carries the noble blood of the royal family, same as the king. Another soldier cuts in, voice bold. Hold on. Let me tell you about the prince's supreme swordsmanship. A different one laughs, teasing. This guy's drunk. Who let him drink so much? In a dim corner of the tavern, a mysterious figure observes the conversation. A woman with purple hair and piercing eyes mutters to herself. Prince Yuri, strange. Just a royal. Yet he saw through my hidden assassination techniques. And now, he's willingly charging into battle. When I tried to stop him, it felt like he was always steps ahead, as if he could see the future. She turns, her voice low, calling the barkeep. I need to find someone. The barkeep, wiping a glass, looks up. What kind of person? She replies, cold but clear. Dark brown hair. Carries a sword. A master swordsman. The barkeep ponders, then shakes his head. That's too vague. She adds, sharper, he's not fluent in continental tongue, heavy accent. The barkeep pauses, then claps, eyes lighting up. Oh, now I remember. Not sure about the hair, but there was a guy with a clumsy continental accent. Ordered risotto, no spices, and asked for directions to Balshad. She nods, sliding a gleaming coin across the counter. Got it. Thank you. The barkeep's eyes sparkle at the coin, grinning. Haha, I didn't say it for a reward, but I'll take your kindness. He turns away, and the purple-haired woman sinks into thought. Balshad, the orc's rallying point. That's where the prince is headed. I need to move first. Find him, one of the East's 10 greatest swordsmen. The scene shifts to Yuri, post-battle in Jeed, as the army moves to their next destination. They've camped multiple times, and with past experience, preparations are sharper. Watching the troops grow adept, Yuri smiles, satisfied. Everyone's quicker after some practice. I thought I'd have to teach from scratch, but this is great. Raymond, beside him, replies, we've camped enough to get the hang of it. Yuri nods, sincere. Thanks, Raymond. Your hard work made this possible. He turns, voice calm. I'll scout the perimeter. Please oversee things. Raymond nods respectfully. Yes, Your Highness. Alone, Yuri walks through the vast forest, thinking. Step away from camp, and it's dead quiet. Night ambushes might be more likely than I thought. A sudden loud shout interrupts his thoughts. Yuri heads toward the sound. There, 2 soldiers berate Cozy. One snarls. I told you not to draw attention. He continues, voice dripping with contempt. Filthy half-orc. Cozy stands silent, tears streaming down. The other soldier grows harsher. You look like a spy. Bet you're tricking the prince, colluding with orcs. Cozy lifts her face, trembling. No, it's not true. I'm not. The soldier grabs her arm, yanking off the glove Yuri gave her. Not a spy? Thief. Give it back. Cozy pleads. I didn't steal. Please return it. Yuri steps forward, voice icy. You too. Everyone's setting up tents. What are you doing here? Seeing Yuri, the soldier stammers. Your Highness, this one. Yuri cuts him off. Eyes sharp. Seems you don't get it. I'll say it again. Get lost. Under his commanding tone, the soldiers tremble, chorusing. Yes, we're sorry, and flee. Yuri turns to Cozy, softening. You okay? He hands back the glove, smiling. Take it. Cozy, grateful, bows. Thank you, Your Highness. Yuri adds, I can punish them. Want me to? Cozy shakes her head, voice steady. It's fine. People love beauty, hate ugliness. It's instinct. Your help would make things easier, but it'd push my dream further. Curious, Yuri asks, your dream? Cozy hesitates, then says, I want to be accepted, to live in harmony with others. Yuri ponders, not an easy dream. He places a hand on her shoulder, voice warm. Cozy, you're with Hernando, right? Learn Orcish from him. You need a skill to survive among humans. The scene shifts to night, the camp on high alert. In a tent, someone asks, how's the night ambush defense? Raymond replies confidently. All supply areas are covered with fireproof tarps. Guards are posted around the wooden fence and camp. Jared interjects, skeptical. Is all this necessary? You've doubled the manpower. Yuri points to a spot on the map, voice low. This is orc territory. Anything can happen. Dark magic is highly likely. Mid-explanation, a soldier bursts in, shouting, Your Highness, trouble. Orc attack. The tent erupts. Everyone rushes out, greeted by chaos. Soldiers clashing fiercely with orcs, flames rising from tents. Yuri mutters, worse than I thought. A large barrel crashes down, releasing a thick black aura, slamming into the ground. An explosion behind Yuri startles him. What's that? Seeing the flames, Yuri wonders, gunpowder? Hernando, beside him, shakes his head, not gunpowder. It's faded mana magic. This is a large-scale attack. Yuri turns, resolute. Hernando, what's the strategy here? Hernando points ahead. They're making bombs with magic and lobbing them. We need to stop the source. Yuri nods, shouting to Raymond and Jared. Split into units. Take command. Gripping his sword, his eyes blaze. I'll find who's behind this. Mana surges from Yuri's body, radiating terrifying power. He murmurs, determined, and I'll see his face. Yuri glanced at Hernando, asking, where's the magic coming from? Hernando pointed ahead, replying, that way. Without hesitation, Yuri stomped the ground hard, declaring, all right, I'll be back. He shot forward in the direction Hernando indicated. As he moved, something caught his eye, startling him. He noticed a broken flag tied to the back of an orcful, the one he'd broken before. Gripping his sword tightly, he charged, teeth clenched. So it's you. The Orkvul didn't let him gain the upper hand, swiftly drawing an axe from its back and swinging it to block Yuri's incoming strike. They exchanged blows fiercely. Yuri stepped back, eyeing his trembling arm, thinking his strength isn't ordinary. His movements are strange, like a seasoned fighter. I don't like this, but I need to keep my distance first. Before he could think further, the Orkvul lunged, swinging its axe down with force. With quick reflexes, Yuri dodged by stepping back. The Orkvul unleashed a barrage of attacks, but Yuri skillfully evaded each one. Infuriated, the Orkvul roared, launching another strike. This time, Yuri chose not to dodge, raising his sword to meet it head-on. After parrying, he spun his sword, slashing powerfully at the Orkvul, eliciting a pained cry. His face darkened as he muttered, "I admit, he's different from the rest. He's on another level." His eyes grew serious as he said, "Let's see how skilled you really are." With that, he charged, thrusting his sword toward the Orkvul's throat, forcing it to dodge in panic. Suddenly, dense dark aura enveloped the Orkvul, as if fueling its strength. It swung its axe down, shattering the ground. Yuri narrowly retreated to avoid the blow. Sliding across the ground, he closely observed the Orkvul's every move. He muttered, "What's this scene before me?" Following his gaze, the Orkvul was fully cloaked in dark aura. Yuri marveled, "Mana technique?" The Orkvul gripped its axe tightly, stepping calmly toward him without fear. Yuri thought, "When I heard they used magic, I should have suspected it. An orc mage using mana techniques?" Recalling the burning base, he exclaimed, "Could they even use gunpowder?" Hernando replied, "Not gunpowder, it's twisted mana magic. One of the orc warriors has mastered mana techniques." A smirk curved Yuri's lips. Gripping his sword, he looked ahead, saying, "You're one of their elites, aren't you?" His eyes flashed. He unleashed soul-seizing slash, invisible sword marks etching across the Orkvul's body. Unaware, it charged recklessly. Yuri parried while noting its weaknesses, then swiftly thrust at its throat, catching it off guard. As the sword reached its throat, the Orkvul grabbed the blade to stop it. Its ferocious glare met Yuri's action. Yuri exclaimed, "Damn it! You channeled mana to your throat to reduce damage?" The Orkvul yanked the sword from its throat, roaring in fury, still gripping the blade. Yuri tightened his grip on the hilt, slashing powerfully, severing the fingers holding his sword. He quickly retreated, dodging the Orkvul's counterattack. Glancing at a cut on his shoulder, Yuri gritted his teeth, grudgingly admitting, "This guy's no pushover." Smirking, he said, "So light attacks won't do, huh?" He poured a massive amount of mana into his sword, smiling. "All right, let's have a real fight." Both sides focused intensely, eyeing each other warily. Like arrows, they clashed, exchanging rapid slashes that shook the surroundings. A massive explosion erupted where they fought. As the dust settled, the ground was riddled with craters. A piece of the axe's blade was lodged in the earth. Yuri's eyes turned icy as he stared at the kneeling Orkvul. Without hesitation, he charged, gripping his sword, shouting, "It's over." He thrust his sword into the Orkvul's chest, drawing a pained scream. It collapsed, rolling to the ground. Pulling his sword out, Yuri saw it still moving, thinking he's still alive. As an elite, he must know a lot. Killing him now would be a waste. Soldiers rushed over, shouting, "Your Highness." One asked, "Are you all right?" Another glanced at the Orkvul, saying, "An orc?" Yuri nodded. "That's right." He asked, "What's the situation at the camp?" A soldier saluted respectfully, replying, "It's nearly stabilized, sir." Yuri sheathed his sword, saying, "Good. Gather all surviving orcs in one place, and bring this one too." He glanced at the Orkvul, adding, "From now on, the orc interrogation begins." Back at the camp, Hernando approached, eyeing Yuri's wound, saying, "That's a vulnerable spot. You need to relax it properly to avoid injury." He began treating it. Yuri turned, asking, "Got beaten by an orc again, then patched up?" Hernando grinned. "What? You just wander off and let others hit you." Yuri snapped, "Brat." After a few minutes, Hernando finished, saying, "Done." Luckily, the wound isn't too deep. Yuri rotated his shoulder, feeling smoother movement, and smiled. "Feels good now." But before he could finish, Hernando interrupted. "Wait, Your Highness." He turned to a soldier, ordering, Bring the chair. Yuri blinked, startled, as an intricately carved chair was slammed onto the ground. Hernando announced proudly, a chair fit for a majestic commander on the battlefield. Conduct the interrogation here. Yuri frowned. What's this? Hernando smirked. A commander needs presence. I had a soldier who was a carpenter make it. Yuri's lips curled into a smile. Hesitant, he said. Well, since you went to the trouble, I can't refuse. He sat, satisfied, commenting, not bad. Pretty decent. Clearing his throat, he glared at the orcs below, voice cold. The prisoner interrogation begins now. Bring them up one by one. Following his order, Jared dragged an orc forward, dunking its head into a vat of oil, scorching its face as it screamed in pain. The other orcs flinched in fear. Yuri declared, You get one chance to answer. He asked, Who ordered the night raid? An orc roared something. Cozy began translating. Your Highness, it says. Yuri cut him off, raising a hand. No need. It's clearly cursed. He signaled Jared to proceed. Jared grabbed the rope binding the orc, plunging its head into the oil again, eliciting agonized screams, a warning to the others. Hernando and Cozy flinched, unnerved. The orc was engulfed in flames, wailing in despair. Yuri expertly twirled a small dagger, staring coldly at the orcs below. I'll ask once more, briefly. Your answer decides your fate. As he spoke, he aimed the dagger at an orc on the ground. With a cold gesture, it pierced the orc's chest, drawing a tortured scream. Yuri continued icily. I might let you die painlessly. The orc still lived. Yuri ordered. Jared, handle him. The other orcs roared in fury. Yuri turned to Cozy. What did it say? Cozy replied. It says they're just low-ranking soldiers, clueless. They claim Orkville gave the order and beg us to punish him and spare them. Yuri smirked. Haha, he's trying hard. His tone turned cold. So, the raid was Orkua's order, correct? The name sparked whispers among those behind. Orkua? Never heard of it. The Orc King, Orkua, must be the one who incited the Orc Alliance. He massacred countless knights in my past life. In this war, he must be eliminated. Cozy translated. It asks if answering means being spared. Yuri said, Tell it yes. Cozy relayed the message. After hearing Orkville's words, he hesitantly told Yuri, Your Highness, this Orkville wants an oath. Yuri raised an eyebrow. An oath? Cozy continued. It says betraying an oath and harming an opponent is like dragging your honor through the mud. Yuri laughed. Haha, it's dealt with humans plenty. A muscle-brained orc saying that. He declared, Fine, I swear. Jared started. Your Highness, what are you thinking, letting it go? Yuri reassured. It's fine, Jared. Calm down. Turning to Cozy. So, it was really Orkua's order? Cozy translated. It says yes. The Han tribe's chief acted on Orkua's command. Yuri pressed. What about the Orc Alliance? How did they know our march route? Cozy said. It claims Orkua has ways to gather intel, but it doesn't know how. Jared interjected. Your Highness, so Orkua knew our march and ordered the raid? Yuri sighed. Yes, likely the same way the Blue Nation gathered forces. Looking down, he asked, Orkville, final question. How strong is Orkua? Orkville growled, saying something that made Cozy tremble. He translated. It says even a horde of Orkvilles couldn't defeat him. He swears no creature is more savage or powerful than Orkua. Yuri nodded. Could be. But remember, humans are more cunning and ruthless than you think. He held up a pendant, an raging Orkville. Want to challenge me? I plan to keep my oath. Are they really charging? Orkville trembled, struggling, the ropes binding it fraying. Soldiers shouted. The chains are breaking. Damn it. The ropes snapped. Orkville stomped, fists clenched, charging Yuri with a furious roar. Yuri smirked, saying calmly, Stop him. He added, Pity. For one preaching honor, you're utterly unworthy. 3 of Yuri's guards surrounded Orkville. Yuri turned away, saying, Send him to his ancestors. As his words fell, blood sprayed across the ground.